It's a warm Thursday morning. Welcome to the AM News here on the AM Show. My name is Pakwesi Shandov. To our very first story, National Chairman of the Opposition National Democratic Congress, Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo, has described President Akufo-Addo's administration as insensitive and not empathizing with the sufferings of the masses. He says current hardships shows that government has stopped thinking as it has blamed the situation on COVID-19. Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo has been speaking with JoyNews.
In a situation like this, first of all, you need to assure the people that you are sensitive to their plight and their demand. So you come in with measures that will let the people realize you are thinking about them. You have students going to school, you have workers going to work day in and day out. For instance, in situations like this, you can quickly get high occupant buses. You can provide buses for students. You can say that, look, workers will pay something and join buses to work to and from. If you have a coupon, say 100 Ghana cedis, and you are a student and you are from Legon, come to the circle, go to Accra, join the bus, pay 100 cedis a month. And I've been told that in Germany they are paying about 9 euros, and then you can join the, and then you bring in buses. There is a rail line between Tema and Accra, between Nsaom and Accra. You rehabilitate it, you put more coaches there. Every 30 minutes or every 1 hour, coach is running, taking workers, I mean, But
all of that is extra cost to the state. At this point, the state also needs to generate revenue. So finding the balance is really the challenge.
The fact of the matter is that first you must be sensitive to the plight of the people. You are there to govern the people. And so sometimes the state ought to show sensitivity to the people. That is why in situations like this, workers are calling for COLA, cost of living allowance. You see, when you are increasing salary by 7% and fuel prices are shooting the roof, how do you expect workers to survive? How do you expect students to survive? How do you expect the ordinary people to survive? So you then come in and say that, look, I am cutting down on this expenditure, I'm cutting down on this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, and I'm doing these savings to support the vulnerable and the poor in the society. That is how government should respond when we are in crisis like this. But you are not doing that. You are still using long convoys of 30 to 20, four-way drives. You are still putting a chair in a four-way drive and putting fuel in it. I mean, you must show and demonstrate practically that you are empathizing with the people. The suffering masses, you are empathizing with them. So you are coming out of palliative measures that will reduce the sufferings that the Ghanaian people are going.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
One can say that this government is not showing anything at all.
Now, elsewhere, Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagbin says the continuous flooding in Accra is unacceptable and decried the lack of action to deal with the situation. Mr. Bagbin warns that if members of Parliament do not come together to deal with the situation, Guineans will turn against their elected representatives for failing to make their lives better.
Just to tell you what you all know, that this day is a rainy day, and we those who are representatives of the residents of Accra are, as you know, completely worried about the rain and its effect on the lives of our people. Actually, a number of the MPs are around their constituencies trying to see what they could do to help the constituents. And so my attention has been drawn to it. And then we've been trying to see what we could do. The House should need to have a meeting, whether at the Committee of the Whole, with the sector ministers in charge of the situation. The drainage situation, the housing sector, works, we have to do to welfare, our behavior as a people, so that we see what kind of interventions as a house we could put in place to support. It's very, very important. We can't continue to have this year in and year on, just ad infinitum. It's not acceptable. And so please, leadership, try and get in touch with the sector ministers let's have a conversation on this issue. If not, you are the people that your constituents will continue to blame, because you are the people that they elected to make their lives better. So please, I understand why so many of you are not present in the House.
Meanwhile, drivers who ply the Tuba Junction diversion road in the Gan South municipality are worried about the deteriorating condition of the stretch. They say they have been forced to spend more because of damages caused by potholes on the road, leaving them with no choice but to carry out regular repairs on their vehicles. They want government to intervene. Ifwa Aprakwa reports.
The road is terrible. Within a short time, our cars break down.
Because of this road, I go home with body pains all the time. My vehicle is always damaged.
The road is terrible and our cars break down easily. Prices of car parts are high. Mechanics have also increased their prices.
Plying the Tuba Junction road is gradually becoming a nightmare. The road connects key localities in the Gan South municipal and parts of the central region. It is a diversion for persons heading to Cape Coast from Accra who want to avoid possible vehicular traffic at Kasua. For those who live in areas such as Tuba, Kokobite, and Nyanyano Kakraba, the road constructed less than 8 years ago came as a huge relief. All the bitumen have eroded and the road has now become a source of grief to users. The station master at Tuba Junction, taxi rank Mutala, is troubled about its current state.
The moment a car falls into the pothole, something gets damaged. Yesterday, my car fell in one. Almost 5 cars have been damaged this morning. We spent close to 2,000 Ghana cedis for repairs.
2,000.
All complaints, according to the station master, have gone unanswered.
Chief Executive Assemblymen
The MP is here. DC and Assemblymen are all here. They promised to fix the road when voted into power. We have written to them, but nothing has been done.
Drivers are not the only ones affected. Traders are also equally worried.
When it rains, this place gets flooded. We end up parking our stuff.
When it rains, the road floods. We are forced to close before time.
Our goods get carried away whenever it rains due to the floods. If they do not fix the road, I won't vote coming 2024.
Taxi drivers who know the route quite well either refuse to accept passenger rides or charge higher. In order to board a vehicle, Abdul, a resident, must pay more.
Because the road is not good, the transportation fare here is also very much high.
Businesses and residents alike are bearing the brunt of the current state of the road and are calling on government to intervene.
We are pleading with government to fix our roads.
We plead with Nanado, wherever he is, he should please repair our road.
Road Transport Ministry should actually come look at it and then take it as a priority.
The people have spoken, but will government act? Ifwa Aprekwa Boafo's report read to you.
Now, our 60-bed hospital located at Konongo in the Asante Akim Central Municipality remains non-operational after completion in September 2021. This is because work on a major access road to the facility has stalled as contractors have abandoned the site. Residents are unhappy about the development and want government to fix the situation.
The 1-kilometer unasphalted road has been the bane of the operationalization of this beautiful edifice. This facility, when operational, will serve the people of Asante Akim Central Municipality and adjoining districts. Residents who are eager to access quality healthcare at the ultra-modern facility are unhappy with the delay. They want the government to immediately bring back the contractor to site to asphalt the road.
We always have to hire a taxi to access the road whenever it rains.
Because of your Yendi. And this serious partner never fast our so and yet
It's worrying us. The community will take a better shape when the hospital is completed. It's been a long time since they started, but if they finish, it will be of good benefit to us.
Municipal Chief Executive Robert Yaukwachi says the certificate for the road has been raised by the contractor awaiting approval.
Myself and the regional minister have engaged the contractor several times, and I can tell you that the major works on the road is concerned has been done by the contractor. But his certificate has been raised and he's looking for money. I've engaged him together with the regional minister, and as we speak, I am confident by a week or two he will be on site to do what he has to do to complete the road, so that we will have access to invite the president for the commissioning. So we are monitoring, and I'm sure a week or two the contractor will be on site.
According to the MCE, security at the facility is heightened to ensure health materials are not stolen before commissioning. Mr. Yaukwachi claims staffing is not a challenge for the government in operationalizing the new facility.
We already have an old hospital, of which this hospital is going to be managed by most of the staff that are working over here. So when you talk about, we know the government not getting money to, pay the workers who will be working there, it's neither here nor there. We are always keeping an eye on this hospital, because if you look at the work that has been done, so long as this hospital is concerned, as a leader of this particular municipality and the chairman for music, it will be an indictment on me to sit aloof, look at it, and make people go there, steal the gadgets that we are going to use to do this delivery.
Some food vendors in the area are upbeat about opportunities for business to boost the local economy.
Because the hospital is not in full operation, we are unable to sell. We are hoping the hospital is open soon, so we can sell.
Now, with the lack of potable water running through many homes in Ghana, roof runoffs harvesting is an alternative source of water. However, roofing materials have been identified to affect the water's quality. A research by the Department of Chemistry at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology shows consumers are at risk of dangerous health effects from drinking roof runoffs. Lab FM's Kwesi Debra speaks with lead scientist Professor Osayakutu.
Satamani is one. Now, Dimuagro, Udimuagra, Utimida Kama, Oba, and Imran Utimida Kama. And I feel so no, the Subi, Ede, See and Yoma, Ede was here, Papanum cars. I feel so no, Satamani Susana, how much says Apollo Yawa, or so in Sua, Edwin Chance and Sua, and a sweet Mima, Apollo Echo. It's Pimpin in Sua, it of fish on air. Oh, in so I took free so a good chance to saw a sobino. What is man? And I'm saying no, a more a soft water knitting, it's me poor grow. Come amount. What did Darren so I hear? Only means so and so a come on.
With the lack of potable water running through many homes in Ghana, roof runoffs harvesting is an alternative source of water. However, the roofing materials have been identified to affect the water's quality. The research, published in the journal Science of the Total Environment, sought to find certain substances and how they can impact consumers' health. Professor Osayakutu is the lead scientist.
Since the environment is polluted and water runs through the environment, that is the atmosphere, before it gets to us or before we can harvest it. My interest was to find out whether these atmospheric particles have impact on the water quality as it rains. And I also observed that one of the materials that is used for rainwater harvest is actually runoff from roofs. So I also decided that since these roofing materials are made up of certain elements, metals, do they have any potential to leach these metals into the water that we harvest? My study at Ejoso was actually informed because of the harvest of rainwater. And I also realized that Ejoso, most people in Ejoso don't have access to pipe-borne water. Most of them are using boreholes and hand-dug wells. So my survey, initial survey, you realize that most of the people in Ejoso and its environs do harvest rainwater and use it for domestic purposes.
The researchers found heavy metals such as cadmium, iron, chromium and some germs were above the WHO standard. Cadmium in runoffs from asbestos roofing, for instance, was found to pose the biggest risk.
So we have procedures to estimate whether these metals can pose cancer and non-cancer risk. So we look at the individual metals from the individual roofing materials, and we realize that cadmium was one of the toxic metals that we can talk about so far as the metals of targets are concerned. And we realize that cadmium in all the roofing materials could pose non-cancer risks to both children and adults. And then we also realize that the same cadmium from the asbestos can also produce a cancer risk so far as human beings that use the water for both drinking and dermal contact, because we can use it to bath. Yeah, so when you bath with it for your lifespan, or you drink it for your lifespan, then there's a higher possibility that you can have cancer. So if you are going to harvest water that you use for domestic purposes, then the recommendation is that we should use the most recent roofing materials.
Reporting for JoyNews, Kwesi Debra.
A member of parliament for Yendi, Farouk Aliyu Mahama, has renovated 3 school blocks which were destroyed by a rainstorm 3 years ago. Pupils of these schools have had to study, under trees or in the destroyed building for the past 3 years. Mr. Aliyu Mahama hopes this will enhance teaching and learning. Northern Regional Correspondent Martina Bugri has the rest of the story.
The school structures became death traps, endangering the lives of the students because of the dilapidated nature. Having been constructed several years ago, they gave in to a heavy rainfall that hit the area. The schools are Nuru Islam Primary School, Kunkun Primary and Zakwali MA Primary. At a short ceremony to hand over the renovated schools, the MP said education is the pivot for the development of the area, therefore his decision to prioritize education.
Today has been a very memorable day after a historic commission of the Vice President yesterday of the Tamale Yendi Tatale Road. It was historic for the people of Dhaka, having a government that cares for the people. Today again is a continuation of projects initiated by my yourself in my office to make sure that the mandate that the people of Yendi gave to me is reciprocated in the educational aspect of whatever we want to achieve. Having been a member of parliament who has prioritized education as a pivot of development for the future, using my late father as a status quo, looking at him as past his humble beginning as being a vice president who came from a very poor background, but used education in the less facilities he got in the end, was able to rise through the ranks to become a vice president. So education is something that was very, very dear to my heart, looking at the areas, the Nuru Islam, the Konongo school, and the Zakwali school. I looked at the situation, and when I looked at the probable nature of the school, I thought wise as an MP and a responsible one of us to construct and renovate a new school that will give the inshallah, we'll be able to finish all the 3 schools, and we're happy, and the people are happy, and obviously it is part of the responsibility of an MP.
He said he would continue to work hard to help empower women and the youth economically.
I'm making sure that the mandate given me the first 2 years and the subsequent years that are going to come are going to be nothing but development, education, infrastructure, reducing the poverty levels of our women, making our women who are the most critical people in society to be happy, the youth unemployment, and make sure that the Yendi is being placed on the map of the city that is belonging of the status of the traditional capital of that.
Assistant Headmaster for the Zakoli MA Primary School, Bawa Swalisu, said it was a relief to finally have a decent place to study.
We are very grateful to the Honorable MP, Raj Farouk Ali Muhammad, for putting the school into a befitting environment for teaching and learning. We are very thankful to him. The school was in a very dilapidated state. I wish you could see how it was. It was very, very dilapidated. And actually, when we put it on social media and he saw it, he felt for us, and then he came in and then put it into this nice shape.
The MP also handed over a mosque.
That's all time would allow. My name is Pakwisi Shandoff. The show continues with Benjamin and Bernice.
Well, a very good morning to you. We're about to hit the newspapers, the few of those that came in this morning, and reflect those stories, share them with you. And we're joined by Bridget Jokbenuku, who is a former presidential candidate for the PPP. A very good morning to Bridget. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure having you.
Happy to be here again.
Great. So even before we get into the papers, I'd just like to run this by you very quickly. We know that in this year alone, there have been a number of price increments when it comes to our fuel products. Now we're looking at another hike, about 11% when it comes to diesel and about 13% when it comes to petrol. You put that side by side with the inflationary rate, which has shot up again. And as of today, like we're being told by some of the bulk oil distribution companies, we're going to see yet another increment. You know, I was just reading a story earlier today at dawn about the United States situation. They are complaining. We know how low fuel prices are there, but they are getting a gallon, which is about 14 plus liters, for $5. And we're getting a liter for just maybe even $1.50 or $2, depending on the exchange rate on any day. That's the stark reality. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think this horse has been flogged many times. It's been said that the taxes on our fuel, some of them are unnecessary right now or are too much. But the government hasn't bothered to reduce those tax components that add up to the price of fuel. And probably this is the time for them to start looking at that and saying, we need to reduce it for the sake of the poor Ghanaian, because we are suffering on all fronts. And indeed, when there's an increase in fuel prices, it definitely feeds into the inflationary rate, because then we feel that everything which is transported, therefore, will increase in price. I mean, most of our food stuff doesn't come from the cities. It comes from up in the communities, or in the hinterland, as we call it. And so long as it's transported, I am a business person. I bring my products from the Volta region, and the price has gone up. And I can't even blame the transporter for hiking the price. I can't even bargain with him. But obviously, there are tax components that are deemed unnecessary. Certain, I believe, for us right now, I haven't gone into, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's something to do with toll, and there's something to, all kinds of taxes, apparently, which add up to make the price of fuel go up. And of course, each time the price, or the international price goes up, the tax is a percentage component, so that will also increase. And we must start looking at the average Ghanaian and saying, how is this affecting us? How is this affecting our inflation? And consider removing some of those taxes. I had the unpleasant experience 2-3 days ago of attempting to go to Tema. And of course, because they are fixing or repairing all access to Tema, as it were, I mean, it's either the motorway or the beach road. I went along the motorway through Community 18. So I was spared a bit of the traffic, actually, because I joined the motorway at Community 18. But I still sat in it for a good, 25 minutes or so to get out. And I thought that, well, since I was coming back to a place like Teshanungwa, I had no other option but to come along the beach road. And that was even worse. So both areas both roads or access roads to Tema are under construction or repair. And therefore, you sit in there for a long time. And needless to say, by the time I got back to Accra, my fuel, or to Teshi, my tank was close to empty, sitting in traffic and burning fuel. So that would, if I'm selling something, certainly I'll be passing on the price to the consumer, and that would definitely affect the inflationary rates, and that's what everybody is doing.
You tell me, Bridget.
So, yes,
the last time we interacted, you spoke about, yes, your business and the fact that the way things are going, you are trying not to increase your prices, just to break even, just about. But with the way things are going, between the last time we spoke and now, have you been compelled to make any changes as far as the prices of your goods are concerned? I remember you mentioned.
You bring that up because last night, I think one of the last things I did at my desk here before I went to bed was to look at my prices again. And I still have a little bit of leeway before I mean, with this current price increase, I wonder what my transporter is going to say. I might have to start looking at it. But for now, we are all suffering. And sometimes you just want to let the products move. So you hold on a bit and see whether, but when it becomes that you are actually running at a loss, then you've got to look at the prices, yes. But my margins have thinned out considerably, yes.
Well, Bridget, we also have Bernice in the studio. I was just interacting with her concerning, the fuel price hikes and how this is impacting her business. I guess the reality is biting all of us. And on the back of what we expect to happen today, more increments. I was just mentioning, and let me just make that correction. I had to quickly check. I said 14 liters to the gallon. It's actually just about 4. It's 3.7 liters to the gallon. But in the States,
it's 4.5.
Well, it depends on which metric system or which entity. If it's American, it's about 3.7 something, almost 4.
3.78, yes. 3.78,
right,
yeah. Well, right. I sell my oil in American gallons, so I know it's 3.7.
Right. I don't know what your take is on that, Bernice.
On the increase in fuel. Yeah. Well, it just... it's not far from what we've been told by the experts to brace ourselves. You remember when we had this conversation with Duncan Amoa I asked, should we prepare for the worst before it gets better? And his answer was yes. Yeah. And even with food prices, we've also been told same. So, not a prophecy, but a prediction that is coming to pass. So maybe we just have to brace ourselves. I've seen people do the 010. Is
it the meal plan?
The meal plan, 010, that we skip breakfast, have lunch, and then skip supper. And a lot of people are doing 001. And it's just how people are getting by. But during our interactive segment, the calls keep coming in and people are getting frustrated by the day. We hope that some intervention will come.
But what intervention? Because, Mr. President, do you remember Workers' Day, May Day?
Yeah.
It was brought up by, I think, the TUC boss. And he said, look, if we do this, we're going to lose, is it 400 million or 4 billion?
4 billion.
I forget.
4 billion CDs.
Just, I know there was a 4 in there. And we simply can't do that. Some economists have said, well, maybe government, after all, can't do that in our economic state. Others have said, we can do something about the situation. So it's a real balance. But the other side of the conversation is, once the fares go up by this margin, you know, at every 10%, then the transport unions will also start looking at convention and saying, we must increase our fares. And that's exactly what Imoro Abbas was saying in recent times. That just complicates matter for the person boarding public transport every day.
And today for our Living Standard series, we focused on the price of cocoa and wache. And the vendors are saying, look,
the very basics.
Yeah, the very basics. They say we've been trying to cushion our customers, but we can't any longer because every time we go, the ingredients keep, you know, the prices of the ingredients keep rising. And so, like I said, maybe we just have to brace ourselves and as families, look at how, you know, I was suggesting to someone, how about, you know, coming together as families to buy in bulk because it's cheaper than you can share. So I think that people can begin to look at some of these options.
No, not that people can. People are. They are doing them. I mean, we're all cutting, not cutting corners, but cutting costs.
Yeah, let's hear you, ma'am.
I was actually saying to someone a couple of days ago that I have kind of stopped buying in bulk.
Okay.
Because that is working out for me a lot more expensive. I'll buy when I need.
Okay.
So I'm not going to, for now, I'm going to stop doing the go and stock up in bulk and rather buy this okra is finished. Okay, let's buy a little bit and what we need to use now. I was asked yesterday by someone on someone put a post on Facebook to say, what are we to do with this whole situation? And I said, it's like COVID times. Stay in your home and grow what you eat. It's as simple as that. It's becoming quite difficult to move around and to eat. And if you're talking about cocoa and wache, I've had experience with wache where and I don't, the wache I buy, they also already say is quite expensive because it turns out a lot of people used to sell at 2 cedis, 3 cedis. They used to sell theirs at 5 cedis for just the wache alone. And the other day when I went and I said 5 cedis, she said, we don't do 5 cedis anymore, it's 7. So everything will go up, including your usual street food, and you must be measured. Bulk purchase, if you can afford it, yes, but you'll get very little for the bulk. You might as well buy from day to day.
Prices increase by day because some have said, I'd rather buy in bulk, refrigerated, than go every time, and then it keeps increasing. And then in the long run, you know, but like you're saying, it also depends on what works for you, really, because for some people, they cannot even afford the bulk to start with.
But
so they go
the point also is, it depends on what you use frequently. If in your home, you know, you like it's my home and you consume a lot of rice, it makes sense to buy in bulk. But in other things that you may not use so frequently, if it's Gary for you, you do that. Because look, the price of Gary, I think Bridget also produces, I'm not sure, you could confirm. You go and buy Gary today at this price. Next day, this has been added, beans, rice. I mean, so depending on what you consume a lot, you might want to store some of that.
Yeah, I think that the bottom line is we just have to adjust. We just have to make some changes to our daily lifestyle to help us go through this Trying.
But you know, I told you recently that I'm doing the 010. No,
how is
oftentimes it's not even so intentional.
How is it?
It's not so. How is it?
Yeah. Are you able to?
You know, I don't usually
go
eat
through your day
before coming on set and all of that. I'm not a very early morning eater, and sometimes I go. It's more like brunch, entering lunch, and if you have a heavy meal, usually I can't take in too much at the end of. So it's either I don't eat at all till the following morning, or it's something really little. It's not so much of starving myself or anything like that, but
okay.
I mean.
So let's just zoom into the papers. The front page of the Daily Guide. Some interesting stories captured in today's edition. Front page, Baumia unveils Ghana pay. 2 policemen interdicted, 2 promoted. The story on page 6. And publish Adra Safo summons. That is on page 3. And that's coming from the chairman of the Privileges Committee of Parliament, Joseph Osei-Wusu. He's directed a publication of summons to the Member of Parliament for Domik Kwabenya, Sarah Adra Safo, in all relevant media. But we heard this a couple of days ago. I'm just wondering why it still hasn't been done. And the story is rather telling us about what the directive of the chairman...
You know, yesterday when I interacted with Andre Japa, Mercer, Member of Parliament for 2nd, and also on that Privileges Committee, he made mention of the fact that that is more of a last resort. In fact, they don't have to do it, but they're going to do it so that all avenues would have been expended, so that you can't say, maybe I still didn't see it and all that.
But isn't it interesting? Let me come to you, Madam Jobanuku. Isn't it interesting that this is a member of the governing party? You're not talking of the opposition here. And it appears they are actually struggling to reach her. Doesn't that surprise you?
Are they struggling to reach her?
Well, that's what we are being told, and that she spoke to us, said she didn't receive the summons. Well, they say they've tried to serve her, and so they're going into the papers now. But she is a member of the governing party.
Well, it's surprising. That's all I'll say. It's surprising, and if you can't reach her, if you don't know where she is, it's a bit surprising. She's a prominent member of the governing party, not just simply a member. Yes, they ought to have been able to reach her by now. Maybe legally, maybe by legal means, it's a bit difficult. They probably have to reach her in person, and that is what they struggle with. But even then, I'm a bit surprised. If they say they are exploring all avenues and this is one of them, let's see what comes up with that as well. But yes, it's a bit of a surprise. They should know how to reach her.
And another interesting point is in that interview with Blizzard, she mentioned that the president was aware of her situation,
right,
and she had gotten permission from the president. But it's interesting that as someone
I don't know about an explicit bit about getting permission from the president, but she said, yes, the president was aware of her situation and that he was the only one.
But the permission translated into an extension of her leave, which was communicated to us.
Right. So, which was granted, by the way.
Yeah. So the question is, she did that with the president as Minister of State, okay? But having been in Parliament for so long, there's a certain procedure in Parliament also. The question is, why was that not also done? Because the reason she is being hauled before the committee is that she's been absent for more than 15 consecutive days without...
Not necessarily consecutive. In her case, consecutive. Yeah. But if it's 15 within that period. Yeah. But without permission.
Yeah. So the question is, you spoke to the president, but you didn't do the same for Parliament, where you've been a member for so long and should know what the procedures are by now?
You know, back then there was talk about the fact that she had tried to use the normal route, which would be to go through her leadership in Parliament to get to the Speaker, because you don't there are certain bounds you don't transcend, and almost intentionally, so to speak, that had not been done, and so she had to reach out to the Speaker himself, personally at a point in time. So there seems to be a lot as well that hopefully when she appears before the Privileges Committee, I suppose we would get, a better understanding.
Okay, all right. So the other big one on the Daily Guide, the front page of the Daily Guide, AG chases Alex Mode over missing Maslock boss. Let me bring you details of that story. The Office of the Attorney General has filed an application seeking to serve former Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, Alex Mould, through substitute service. Mr. Mould is one of the 2 persons who executed the 5 million cedi bail granted to former Chief Executive Officer of Maslok, Sedina Ationu Tamaklo, who is standing trial for allegedly causing financial loss to the state. The AG's office filed the application for substituted service due to several failed attempts by bailiffs to serve Mr. Mould with an application seeking him to show cause why he should not be made to pay the bail sum as a result of the accused person failing to show up for the trial. Madam Jogbanuku, your quick thoughts on this particular story. There are more details on that on page 3 of the Daily Guide.
Yeah, I find it, well, if he stood surety for her or bail for her, then, and she can't be found, I think it just makes sense that that's what is done. They go after those whoever stood surety for her. So I actually didn't know this case was still going on. I mean, Ghana, it's very interesting. But indeed, if you bail the person, arrested person out, and the person has gone missing, they would, under normal circumstances, come for you or make sure that you pay the bill figure. And I think there's just procedure being followed. I don't know that it's a big deal for a big headline story for Daily Guide. I would even think that the Adwa Safo story was a bigger headliner than. But we know what's going on here.
Okay, but the story gives us some reasons, well, let me call it reasons. So it says the accused person has been absent from trial since October last year after the court granted her leave to go for a medical checkup in the U.S. Justice Efia Sawasa Repotri, who is conducting the case, read an affidavit of non-service filed by a bailiff, which indicated that he went to Mr. Mould's residence on 3 separate occasions to effect the service, but no one came out to attend to him. They also indicated that's a principal state attorney, that they were aware of the situation and have, for that matter, filed an application for substituted service, which is scheduled for today. All right, one last one from the Daily Guide, and we can move on to another paper. Government spent 6 million cedis on Green Ghana just for this year's edition.
How much again?
6 million cedis.
6 million
cedis, yes.
For the 20+ million seedlings that were planted.
So I would have wished that there would have been a breakdown.
That's always the problem, isn't it?
What the 6 million comprises of. But unfortunately, the story doesn't do that. We're only told the total number of seedlings that were distributed. And this 6 million cedis is exclusive of support extended towards the exercise by other organizations and individuals.
You see.
Yes. So we are told that some of the trees were sent into some portions of the forest reserves in the country. And I mean, obviously...
Does that include Achimota?
I knew that was coming up. So, well, let's see. The ministry also says it's put in place a monitoring and assessment team under the chairmanship of Francis Menu Adabo, who is the chairman of the Parliamentary Select Committee, to undertake comprehensive field assessment of trees planted this year. And they are supposed, well, the public has been urged to make a conscious effort and nurturing the trees by watering them, protecting them from destruction, and preventing fires and weeding under them until they grow to maturity. Madam Jogbenuku, 6 million Ghana cedis on this year's.
That is excessive. It's excessive. I know that there was a lot of publicity around it, which was good, but still 6 million cedis is I mean, we are cutting down or willing away part of our forest area just so we can spend and then we go back and spend 6 million to plant more trees. It's not even making sense. There are so many, I mean, trees are important. I proudly say that I planted some trees last year on the Green Ghana Day, which some are flourishing, not all of them. I went back for some more this year. And I believe in the Green Ghana concept and greenery everywhere. I want trees all around. my house and wherever I go. But to spend 6 million cedis when we are struggling, they say we are broke. I mean, can we just put the brakes on and be a bit considerate of ourselves? It's almost as if, you know what, everybody is just trying to get their little bit or pound of flesh out of every little contract or every little opportunity that they can get. We are bleeding, the country is bleeding, and yet people are just so selfish and so self-seeking that we will, you know, make us bleed some more without a care. And this is what is happening. 6 million cedis it's unfathomable to think about it, that this is being spent on greening Ghana. Look, if you give school children, and I heard indeed that they were going to involve school kids, but if you gave school kids the opportunity to plant trees and said it's a competition, or even made it amongst the district assemblies and said it's a competition, you'll be surprised the number of trees that would grow and flourish. But what are we doing? We are making a big publicity thing out of it and spending money that does not, we don't have and cannot be accounted for at the end of the day. It's excessive.
Let's get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper, shall we? Some interesting stories there. VIP unveils Ghana Pay mobile money service to promote financial inclusion. I'll bring you some details of that. There's ECG scales up security as it replaces postpaid meters in Yellow Krobo. Dram Oil sues Deloitte over audit negligence claim, and CSO's Lord Government's U-Start program. But let's look at the VIP unveiling Ghana Pay mobile money service. And Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has launched the Ghana Pay mobile money service, an electronic payment platform to enhance financial services and promote financial inclusion. The Ghana Pay is a mobile money service, the first bank-wide solution in Ghana, providing an opportunity for users to have access to unlimited banking services in addition to existing mobile money services. A good thing, most definitely. But speaking of the VIP, the Ghana card being used as a travel document has also been coming to the fore. You would have seen the stories on our platform yesterday. It appears there's a bit of a contradiction because judging from what he told us in the past and what Foreign Affairs Minister Shirley Ayoko Botche is saying now, it appears, and here's why I'm bringing it up. We have a lot of these, not confluences, but disparities or divisions, because sometimes you hear one thing from one government official, next thing you know, it's like the toll booth thing. You hear one thing from a minister, you hear another thing from an MP, you hear another thing from a different minister. I don't know what your take is on that. That's what I'd like to focus on, Bridget.
I found it difficult to understand how the Ghana card would be used as a travel document to certain places. I mean, what does it mean? Does it mean that where you require a visa, your visa would be loaded onto your Ghana card? I still cannot understand. I know that I still hold a passport. And I do have a Ghana card, and I haven't tried traveling anywhere with my Ghana card.
Shadi Ayoko Botche says, go with your passport, and then, I mean, you can carry your Ghana card along for other reasons, but go along with your passport, definitely.
Well, I'm yet to try to use my Ghana. Well, I take that back. I have actually used my Ghana card before somewhere. This was long before this. I got my Ghana card quite early. But that was a very interesting and funny experience. But it was internal travel, domestic travel in the United States, and I had left my passport in one city and I was going somewhere else. It's where they trusted me. I went on trust, really.
So it was based on trust, not because there was a system.
I went to
verify the details.
Right.
There wasn't a system to verify it, and I frankly I don't work with. I would not claim to know how foreign affairs works, but my Ghana card being used as an international travel document, I think it's stretching it a bit, and maybe we should give credence to the foreign minister for now. Maybe it will, at some point, they will work it out and we can go with it.
Bridget, so we'll just take some more stories from the Business Finder newspaper. But as we talk business, our currency news today, it's also on our Facebook portal. The Ghana cedi, when it comes to the dollar, is trading at 8 cedis, 4 pesos. It's gone past 7. The British pound, 9 cedis, 86 pesos. And the euro, 8 cedis, 46 pesos. Bernice.
Front page of the Business Finder, and that'll be your last paper. Banks deepening electronic payment as Dr. Bawumia launches Ghana Pay as a mobile money service for banks. CSO's Lord government to use that program. And this one, 56% of youth say Ghana is moving in the right direction.
50 how many?
6%. That's according to a survey.
Can we take a quick look at that?
Exactly, we should.
Who is conducting the survey?
Most
and all
important,
of that?
yes. So the story says some 56% of young people in Ghana believe the country is moving in the right direction. And it was conducted in many other African countries. Now, some 4,500 young people aged 18 to 24 were interviewed in the survey commissioned by the Johannesburg-based Ichkowitz Family Foundation, a leading African foundation encouraging active citizenship across the continent. In the report of survey conducted in 5 African countries, Ghana came second to Rwanda, where 60% of the young people believe their country is moving in the right direction.
4,000 of them were sampled.
Yes,
it says
4,500 young people aged 18 to 24 were interviewed. Now, I don't know if this 4,000 is across different countries or just exclusive to Ghana, but your quick thoughts as we wrap up here on the news review, Madam Jogbenuku. 56%, the survey says, of young people believe Ghana is moving in the right direction.
What was the sample figure? 4,500. What's the population of youth in Ghana? We know that about 60% of our population is youth. We are about 30 million. 60% should be, help me here.
Just about 20 million, at least.
About 20 million. And you sample 4,500 and say 54% of that. I mean, is this a joke or what? They shouldn't even make news.
But this is, you know, when these surveys are conducted, they will always have a sample size. Someone could say they could have had a bigger sample size, but there will always be a sample size. Here, they've used 4,500.
But the question is it reflective of the larger...
No, that is a discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. I cannot, in all honesty, take this too seriously from what I see out
That's
there.
exactly
but
what I'm saying.
I am trying to say that when you're looking at gathering empirical evidence, you will use a sample size. They've decided to use 4,500.
Well, and that's exactly what I'm saying, that 4,500 does not represent the number of youth. Where did they find them? And who are they?
And reading the story,
and let me ask this: if Ghanaian youth are so happy with the trajectory of the country and where it's going, why are they so angry on social media? I mean, I go on social media these days and everybody is insulting the other. There is so much anger. Why are they so angry if they are happy with the way the country is going? So please, we shouldn't be putting out this. It's purely propaganda. It's PR, and sadly they come and put the sample size there, so we know that it's a joke. It's not. It shouldn't be taken seriously at all.
Yes, the 4,500 is not even exclusive to Ghana. Because the story says overall, only 32% of the 4,500 young people interviewed were optimistic about Africa's prospects, and represented in an 11% drop since the last survey of its kind published in early 2020. And here's another interesting thing. Only Ghanaian youth believe Africa is moving in the right direction. Let me end here.
What a survey.
What a survey. But thank you so much for joining us.
I think that space on that newspaper had to be filled with something, and they put it there. That's what I'll say.
Bridget Jogbenuku, former flag bearer of the PPP. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. We wish you the very best of the day. Up next, we have sports. Do stay. Well, thank you for staying with us. And as we kickstart our big stories, we're definitely looking at a bread and butter issue, a matter that affects all of us. We're talking about fuel price increments. Now, the latest increment slated for today has got many people talking, many tongues wagging. We get into that conversation this morning with our guests who join the conversation. We have Duncan Amwa, Executive Director of COPEC. He joins the conversation. Mr. Amwa, a very good morning to you, sir.
A pleasant morning and a good morning to your viewers as well. Good morning.
Right. Later on, we'll be joined by a rep from the NPA as well as we get into this conversation. But I guess like we say here, maybe we have to give you your stone because you've been saying, I mean, from the start of the year, my interactions with you, January, February, March, April, consistently, that the fuel prices will keep escalating, especially on the back of the tax mix that we have on the fuel products. And that exactly is panning out. But how do you respond to this latest increment as we have it? 11+% on diesel, about 13% on petrol.
Good morning once again, my brother. I think to some of our carpets, it is very disappointing, but not surprising. Not surprising because it's been foretold, like you mentioned earlier, that safety nets are all down currently. A price taker position is where we find ourselves. You also find your local currency not that stable to help withstand whatever shocks you even record on the international market. And then your safety net, like I mentioned, are simply non-functional as we speak. So whatever little impact that the world market throws at us, we would have to pass it on to the average Ghanaian going about normal work. It is not a very good position we find ourselves, but the reality is that we are not out of the woods, and it doesn't look as though we are equally planning or even strategizing to halt these increases, which continue to simply drain our pockets.
Right. So very quickly, just to interject, you're saying basically that leadership is failing because you're saying we've not shown any signs of strategizing or putting in place any real policy measures that would bring us out of the woods. So you're basically saying, and you also say in another breath that the least shocks from what is happening in Russia and Ukraine, and we also have to react. In other words, we're sitting ducks. Each time there is an exposure, we will get caught.
Yes, you do a very good summary there. There's some leadership failing presently. Leadership failing in the sense that you cannot do the same thing and expect different results. We have not tweaked anything. We have left the system to, as though it were on a certain autopilot basis, and so whatever happens, happens. You recall not long ago, there was an intervention which Seaboard had requested for and which Bank of Ghana had, decided to work with, making available the forex. Per our checks, what the Bank of Ghana has even been advancing to the importers is a little under 20% or 25% of what their actual needs are, where you probably find some $50 million or so advanced to them every fortnight, whereas their requirements sit within the range of some 200, 250. every fortnight. Clearly, the little intervention that we even made has become unsustainable, or is something that really cannot even deal with, the currency depreciation bit. Mind you, we also have the other safety net that I did mention, which should have contributed to Ghanaian overall well-being. But clearly, they either have lost focus or non-functional. You talk of the thermal oil refinery, who, if were actually tolling or processing crude for the Ghanaian market to simply buy, you might not need every BDC going to the forex market to now source for dollar to pay their suppliers, because they probably could have gotten some product from the refinery. That is not contributing a liter to all of us. Mind you, you are still paying 3 pesos every liter of fuel you buy towards a toll that has simply been grounded. And then you also have a bust.
But is that not because we want to revive TOR as well? I mean, how do we revive it if we don't contribute to the kitty?
The challenge, I think that TOR conversation, you might have to dedicate probably a whole week, because we have said, and we'll repeat it, if leadership continues to sit lame duck and does not get the refinery up and running in the next 1 month or 2 months, I'm very certain in my mind that by October, there will not be any refinery again for Ghanaians. There will not be any. You have a new refinery.
Hold it, Duncan. I'm sorry I keep interjecting. You're saying by October there will be no refinery if we maintain the status quo. Why?
Well, you have a private investor, currently, just about 600 meters from TOR, putting up a much bigger refinery, right? He does not train technicians. He does not train technical hands. He will pay from the market. You have a sub-regional refinery called Dangote, coming up first quarter 2023. He is not training technicians. He will pay from the market. Out of the over 1,000 workforce you probably currently have at TOR today, your technicians are not up to 200. Some have already left. Others are simply waiting to leave because some money due them have not even been advanced. If all these upcoming refineries were to pick the technical hand, what you'll be left with will be a lot of retraining or going out there to also look for technical people. And TOR cannot afford that competition that these private refineries would definitely be given it. And these refineries are indicated. The private one around TOR in Tema is set to go on stream towards the last quarter this year. And so by the time anybody says Jack, they would have probably started, test running to come on stream altogether. And so we are simply sitting on a ticking time bomb. TOR is going to, vanish or completely go if by October we are still playing the same chess game that we're playing with it. An investor is coming, or there's a proposal on the table that is workable, we won't allow it to work. There's quite a lot that you hear around. There's quite a lot that you see in proposals. Unfortunately, leadership continues to sit lame duck, while certain persons are happy to get the refinery back and running. Others seem disinterested. They don't care if it gets running or not. But that also contributes largely to the stability of your currency. Because the fuel market, like I indicated, if you are going to require $250 million every 2 weeks for importation of finished products, and a refinery could probably come in between, to reduce that number so that the refinery will now have to get maybe the money to buy crude, or probably buy the crude on whatever. It is just a single entity that would now have to source for dollar. And so the market could largely stabilize if your refineries were up and running and you could get the finished product within, tank, locally. Unfortunately, we are not interested. We are not interested. As I speak with you now, a lot of the BDCs would have to price the cedi to dollar above 8.5. 8.5, 8.8, some numbers I have seen. So clearly, whilst we are crying of Russia, Ukraine, the local dynamic is simply also dragging all of us into a very big black hole. And if it's
I'll be coming.
It's an unfortunate situation. And then to add, whilst TOR is non-functional, you have a buffer or a strategic stockholder like BOST, who should at this point, with pinpoint accuracy, be sourcing for products, because indication on the international market is that price would get worse between now and the close of year. Yes, your buffer is not storing anything. It is not making any attempts to get any strategic stock. It will rather behave as though it were a private BDC. Where are we going from here? Clearly, there's a lot of, lapses within the system. That explains why your fuel pricing in Ghana, although Togo would also have to pick product from the international market, Nigeria will have to pick from the international market, other sub-regional countries are picking from the international market, their prices are not as bad as we find ours. The inaction.
Hold for me, Duncan. Let me bring in Mohammed Kudus, PRO with the NPA. Mr. Kudus, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
It's a pleasure having you. Thank you for joining. You've heard Duncan Amwa. He says, as far as controlling prices are concerned, we seem not to have a real strategy, that we're all over the place and that it's a real mess. And you hear exactly what he's saying, that if we don't stem the tide of some of what we're seeing, we're going to find ourselves in a very tricky situation, very dire straits. He talks about the fact that TOR, which we keep paying taxes for, is sitting there. It's not doing anything. And in fact, if we're not careful, by October, there'll be no TOR. Not that the physical structure will not be there, but that the same human resource that these people require, there's another entity just around the TOR area setting up a similar facility. He's talking about Dangote in the West African region. All of these people will be sourcing for logistics, human resource from across the board. And guess what? Some of these very people will be applying for those jobs. How do you react to that?
Let me thank you for having me. I appreciate the position of Duncan, and he actually makes a lot of sense. Because without a doubt, TOR actually plays a critical role in the whole dynamics of fuel and its access and pricing. But as you would agree with me, the issue of TOR is more of policy issue. And if we're talking policy, then it should be the issue of the ministry. Because our remit and mandate does not include what happens.
I am clear with that. I am just asking for your thoughts on the matter, whether you concur or otherwise. I know it is not under your purview, but especially as we keep coming back to this conversation and we have a TOR that is sitting, not refining, what that means is we're going to have to expend more to get the fuel products we use on the market.
Yeah, so like I said, he makes a lot of sense. Obviously, when you have the crude imported and you're going to refine it, there are other products that you could be getting out of the crude than just the finished product that we import. So without a doubt, if you are not talking about the recruitment capacity of TOR, the fact that TOR itself would make many more of the residual products that you get out of refining a crude is actually going to be a benefit to Ghana and to all of us. So I am with him. Anything that would be done to revamp TOR, to increase the capacity of TOR, I'm with him. And like I said, it actually makes a lot of sense.
When you look at the system, especially as you're an establishment, do we have a strategy in terms of dealing with the hike in fuel prices? Because according to Duncan, we seem to be just waiting and it's hitting us. And the least of shocks from the global market, especially on the back of the Russo-Ukrainian war, means that we'll be facing the brunt. Now, if you look at this year alone, the number of fuel price increments we have had, farmers are complaining because diesel prices are shooting up. They are shooting up again by 11.4% or 14%. We have petrol prices that are constantly going up. Do we have a strategy that you know of?
Obviously, I think we have a strategy. I might not be able to speak comprehensively to that, but I think long term, the body that has actually been established, the petroleum hub, is going to be a game changer in the long run, because we are thinking of actually creating a hub, okay, within the sub-region, so that Ghana would be a center for the dealing and trading in fuel and its related products. So obviously, in the long run, if we are able to really establish per the dreams of the petroleum hub, I think Ghana would be the good for it. So if you're talking long-term strategy, I think we have that. And maybe I would encourage you to speak to the chief executive for petroleum hub. Where have they gotten to? What are they up to as we speak? And then Ghanaians will be able to get an insight into their activities. Presently, I'm not sure I can speak to that, because as you rightly put it, the dynamics are not within our control. It is what happens in the international market out there. So in the immediate term, we might have to just brace ourselves with the current happenings. But long term, like I said, I think the petroleum hub, if we're able to succeed with this dream, it will be the game changer.
I find it interesting, and pardon my curiosity, when you say you think there is a strategy, not that you know there is a strategy. And I do accept that some of that does not lie in your purview. But from where you sit, I believe if there were such a clear strategy, though this is technically not under your remit, you would know about what exactly the plan is. But the fact that you say you think there is a strategy leaves me with a lot of thought. But let's talk about...
No. Let me clear myself. I was only trying to be cautious, because that is not an organization that I speak for. It has its own structure. It has its own personnel. And then that's why I implored you to speak to the chief executive. Mr. Charles is available, and I think that when you speak to him, he might be able to give you a lot of clarity into their vision, their plans, and what they are currently up to. I didn't want to assume a certain authority that I am not. Then probably somebody could come to me for a follow-up question that I will not be able to answer. That was why I was careful in using the word think. But obviously, that strategy is there. That organization has been established. The chief executive is there. The board is there, and they are currently working.
Tell me, I know as far as the MPA is concerned, you also are aware of what measures are being put in place as far as the dollar to CD especially are concerned, to ensure that the bulk oil distribution companies and others, the OMCs, can access funds at certain rates so that they don't have to keep increasing their products. But I'm looking at today, as in the last few hours, what the dollar to CD is, and it's jumped again. There's been another surge over 8 CDs, that is 8.04 to be specific, to the dollar. What does this mean for the oil marketing companies?
Okay, so like you alluded to, I think that, but for that strategy, would have either been buying fuel more because the cost for the forest would have been higher for the BDCs, or we probably would have been experiencing shortage. But as it is, the system has been created in such a way that first, it makes the dollar available to them, and secondly, it is at a competitive rate. So
at what rate? At what rate are they purchasing the dollar currently? Can you share with us?
Oh, currently, on top of my head, I cannot.
You're saying you do not know what rates the OMCs are getting the dollar from the central government are or is?
No, so that is why I was careful. I said that it is at a competitive rate. It is not as they would have gotten it on the open market. It is.
So you're saying that they would definitely get it for less than 8 CDs and 4 pesos. That's what you're saying.
I can't speak to the specific, but I know it is lesser than what is out there. And like I said, it's an arrangement that is...
I'm sorry, I'm heckling you a bit, but how can you say you can be sure it is when you don't even know what the real figure is?
So the rationale for the establishment of that particular platform was, first of all, to make it available for them. Secondly, to actually arrest them from are the soaring prices in the open market. And that is why I said competitive. What it means is that it is going to be relatively cheaper than what they would have gotten if they were to go out there on their own into the open market to source for it. So certainly it is. But, because of the fluctuation of the prices, it is not going to be easy for me to just mention a specific figure, because the conditions at a particular time would determine how much it should be sold to them.
Do hold for me, Mr. Kudus. Let me bring back Duncan Amwa, Executive Director of COPEC. You deal with the OMCs as well. Not that you speak for them, but you're in constant interaction with them. When it comes to this bit to do with the prices, and we've been here before, do you have an idea how much you're getting the dollar for currently as OMCs? How much they are getting it?
That would be for the BDCs, because they deal directly with
the BDCs
supplier market. And like I indicated, a lot of the numbers we have seen is between 8.5, 8.8, some getting to as high as 9.0 exchange to a dollar.
Duncan, do walk me through that again. 8, did you say, just confirm, 8.5, 8.8?
Is the least we are seeing, yes. Some 8.8, some 9.0.
That is even above the exchange rate that we have currently.
Yes, they normally would do above, the interbank rate, because like most of them would tell you, you go to the bank, the banks don't have it. You may now have to go to the other market to source for the dollar, and it's usually higher than any interbank rate would provide. Some are actually quoting 9. I'm sure if nothing is done by the next window, which commences July 1st, you could be doing 9.2, 9.5, even 10. So there's a challenge there. The BOG made efforts to step in, but like I indicated, $50 million intervention out of a possible $250 million requirement. Clearly, you are doing 25% of what the market, 20%, not
20%, not 25,
exactly.
20%. Right.
Yes, of market requirement. And so there's all that huge, deficit as far as the forex bit is concerned. I know if BOG had all the money that the market requires, they probably would be able to give it to them, but they also don't. And the pressure on the city simply continues unabated, though there's that intervention from BOG to stem the tide. It seemed not to be, given the sort of result you would have expected. 20%, it's not 50. Initially, we were given the thinking that they probably are able to do almost half what the requirement is, but clearly 50 million is what we know is being advanced out of a possible.
Just to clarify, so that means, is this a one-off 50 million situation where the central bank makes this available to you? It's in a pool. As and when the windows and the challenges come up, you can access them, or the DBCs can access them. What is it like? Is it a one-time situation?
So every BDC has got its own, financial need or money that it needs to pay back to a supplier one way or the other. Now, if you put what they import together, you are doing between 400, 500 million USD monthly. So every 2-week window, or the first window, second window, you are likely to do about 200, 250 million. What I know from Seaboard that has been advanced to them over the period is under 50 million USD as a collective body, not for an individual. So this is available. If I have a need for 100 million and I get 10 million, it means I have to still be on the market asking for the 90 million. If I have a need for 100, I get 20. I still would have to be on the market for another 80 million that I need to push in somewhere. So BOG is intervening solid. It's okay. It's nice. It's fine on paper. But the actual impact, you might not get it at the pump immediately.
Would you say this intervention is working? Has it failed or is it working?
It's a good step. But then again, if we would need that intervention to yield the dividend that Ghanaian consumers would wish to see, we would need to scale up a bit, because the 50 out of a possible 250, for me, is quite woeful.
So you've been talking about 50%, and now you're talking about scaling up. How much do you feel it is feasible for government to scale up to now? 20% is not working. How much do you think will work?
You see, what we were made to accept initially was that at least half of what the BDC needs is probably being advanced to them. So if you needed a possible 250, you get 120.
25.
What it would mean is that you will not exert as much pressure on the market anymore. And so you would not be able to be prorating the effects. And for that matter, you know, the figures I quoted, 8.5, 8.8, 9.0, that pressure could have reduced a bit. But if you're doing under 25%, the pressure would still sunk. And I'm certain that if we don't scale up, it is likely that intervention would come to naught eventually.
Let's look at this juxtaposition, if you like. And we do know that currently in the United States, a liter of, fuel, gas, as they call it, is going for some, or better still, a gallon, which is about almost 4 liters, is going for $5. When you look at our situation, noting that the US has, by and large, had very low fuel prices over the decades. This is quite a bit of a high. We're still doing above that, but it is not too far away. Aren't we being too plaintive? Aren't we complaining too much on the back of what is happening between Russia and Ukraine and what we know?
I wish you had the time so we could analyze that situation.
You wish I had the what?
I wish you had the time so we could analyze the international market numbers very well. The United States averaged $3.5 before Ukraine. They averaged across most states. California would naturally do $1 higher than a lot of the other states will do. So as we speak, whilst most states are doing $5, Cali will do $6 a gallon. Granted, if I was averaging 3.5 and my price has not doubled, right, to let's say 7, I'm still within 5 and 6. What it means for the Ghanaian context, before the start of this year, we were averaging 6.7, 6.9. It came down to about 6.4 in January. 6.4. As we speak, diesel is set to cross the 13 Ghana city mark. That is double the amount. So look at it. While the dollar-paying economy is increasing at pump prices, it is increasing at a slower rate than the cedi-paying economy is increasing per dollar rate. So the American buying petrol today is a lot better off than the Ghanaian buying petrol today. Those are the critical elements we need to interrogate. How come fuel pricing is skyrocketing and escalating faster at the Ghanaian pump than it is doing at the United States pump? Mind you, the two economies are not same. And they don't have the shocks of the currency like we do have with ours. They might not have as high taxes as we do. In fact, some of the states have had to drop taxes for the next 7 months. Yes. But we seem not to do much with either the taxes or the currency. Neither do we seem to do much with our buffer, which is BOS. Neither do we seem to do much with the refinery, which the United States has kept all its refineries up and running. And so that might be worth interrogating profusely, because clearly the rate of increase in Ghana is quite astronomical and alarming. And I do think that we are getting to a crisis point if we do not find some minimal solutions to stem this tide. Because clearly, you wake up 2 weeks, and I'm projecting again, if nothing is done, the first window, July, we'll see another price surge because we've left the door open. There's nothing that will give you any comfort, no safety net, nothing. So whatever escalations happen with your currency, you pay for it at the pump. We've said this about 4 or 5 years ago, 7 years. Whatever escalations that will happen because of Russia attacking Ukraine, and now Russia is threatening to even, cut back supply to Europe. Once Russia does that, the simple and the most likely thing that will happen is that cargo will now be diverted from other regions to Europe. You know what that means, right? It means unavailability. Demand is still growing post-COVID. Price will simply go up. That is why I said earlier that in the face of global price trends, what is BOSS being positioned to do? I don't think I have the answer. They are currently behaving as though it was a private trading enterprise. So you know that between now and December, international projections put crude to hit about $150, $160, which means that finished products will likely also go up in some symmetrical, way. What is the advantage BOSS will give to all of us? I don't know. Scary.
Let me come to Mohammed Kudus, and it is indeed scary, especially if you consider the other aspect that I'll be getting to shortly, how this impacts transport fares, and that convention that each time fuel products go up by 10%, especially diesel, the transport unions will also increase their fares. That creates a very delicate situation for ordinary people who use public transport every day. But let me just walk this by you. We've seen this coming. In November last year, we were one of the most countries with the most expensive fuel prices on the continent. So it's nothing new. In fact, when you look at the latest, we are just edging into the top 10. The figures from March showed that we were just outside of the top 10 in terms of the countries with the highest petrol prices across Africa. But if you consider that Senegal is now selling a liter, which is the highest in West Africa, by the way, at $1.29, the equivalent. And if you look at the latest cedi to dollar pegging or ratio, it means we are just there, if not higher, which would make us one of the highest in Africa and probably the highest in West Africa. Do you foresee any changes at all? I mean, from where you sit, do you foresee we can do anything about this situation? In the meantime, I'm not talking about the long term, in the short term.
Oh, okay. So thank you very much. I think the issue is more to do with the pricing regulatory policies of respective countries. So if you're comparing countries and you don't take into cognizance the pricing policy that applies in their country, you probably would not be able to have a better appreciation. There are some of the countries who are still applying the subsidy. Ghana as a country...
That are still applying what?
Pardon me?
You say there are still countries that are still applying what?
The subsidy regime.
Right.
Yes, but Ghana as a country from 2015, we decided to move out of the subsidy regime for obvious reasons. One, it was creating a lot of shortage, and two, it was creating an unnecessary backlog of debt for government, because subsidy is not something that you're able to plan and put it in your budget. It is because of the activity and behavior of the fuel prices as and when they come about. If you look at even our neighboring big brother Nigeria, it's self-contemplated, and I think they are in the verge of moving away from the subsidy, realizing the kind of damage and hardship that sometimes the budget, the subsidy can bring to the budget and the country for that matter. So is the pricing regime if we decide as a country that we want to go back to the subsidy that used to prevail, you realize that our prices should certainly come down. But do we have the capacity to be able to face the consequence? One, there could be the shortage. If you remember, sometime in 2014, 2015, we had a lot of shortage at the filling stations, not because the product was not available in the world market, but because the suppliers did not have enough money to go and bring, because the subsidy that government guaranteed were not paid to them. So it is not a straightforward issue. It is like a chicken and egg. You probably would go for the subsidy and bear the consequence of it, or you would adopt this zero subsidy where you are able to guarantee a regular supply of the product. I'm not sure which one would be preferable. Is it the high cost that we're supposed to pay, or the non-availability of the product? I think there are two things that we probably should be looking at. But I don't know if I heard Duncan very well when he was speaking about the rate at which the Bank of Ghana is selling the dollar to the BDC. I thought I heard him mentioning something around $9.
I think he was talking about the open market, which got me asking as well whether they are not getting enough from the central bank. And he stated categorically that you're looking at about 250 million, and what the central government can give is only 50 million, which is just 20%, a fifth of that. So obviously they must get the rest from the open market. Okay,
so the 9% is not what the
9 CDs is not what they are getting it at from. Duncan, can you confirm what I just said? And do you know the current rate they are getting it from the central bank for?
Well, the last time we got in these figures, it was around 7.25, 7.5. But like I did indicate, that is just contributing about 20-25% to what the PDC requirement is. So the larger chunk of 80-75% is being sourced for between 8.5 to almost 9 Ghana cedi to the dollar. Not what the Bank of Ghana is giving, not the rate. The Bank of Ghana rate is obviously far lower, but the quantum that they are able to advance to the market is in the region of 20-25%. So clearly, there's a larger chunk that the BDC active players would need to source from the open market. And those are the rates that a lot of them are using, 8.8 currently.
Does that clarify for you, Mr. Kudus?
Yeah, it has. Because, okay, so the rate at which they get it from Bank of Ghana, I think is almost around the figure. But the quantum that the Bank of Ghana is able to advance to the BDC per their requirement, I'm not able to speak directly to that. I might have to take a briefing and then get back on that. But like I was saying, we need to appreciate the pricing policies of respective countries. So if you go to a country like Nigeria, you realize that because majority of their people are consumers of petrol is largely subsidized by them, not like a diesel. That is a policy that they have taken. But like I said, their finance minister actually announced that sometime this year, they are going to be scrapping their subsidy. What it means is that they are probably going to be adopting, if not the same, but a similar policy as we have it in Ghana here, where the forces of demand and supply. And
okay, so it is interesting because I have also followed the Nigerian story in recent times where they have had to give even more subsidies in the last, how many months? Let's say 6 months, within the last 6 months on the back of, what has been happening across the world. And even when you talk about subsidies, Mr. Kudus, by what extent or to what measure, by what percentage of subsidy are they cutting? I think if you had a proper breakdown of that, that would also be interesting. Because what you're suggesting is they are totally scrapping the subsidies. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yes, that's what they're saying. They're saying that they are trying to get a certain percentage of their population who are within a certain poverty bracket that is yet to be defined. Mm-hmm. And then some stipends might be advanced to them as a way of cushioning them. But what I'm saying is that...
So it means it's not going to be a whole-scale removal of subsidies. That's basically what you're saying.
No. So if you come to Ghana, somebody would tell you that LEAP is a form of subsidy because LEAP is an identification of a certain bracket of people who occasionally or regularly are advanced with some monetary compensation by central government. So that probably can be likened to what they are thinking about. But I'm saying that whatever it is, ultimately they are also looking at scrapping a subsidy because they are appreciating the hardship that subsidy probably is bringing to their budget and the country at large. Like I said, subsidy is not something that you are able to predict, okay, because as and when the dynamics change, and you never know what would trigger the dynamics. The dynamics, it could be a pandemic, it could be an extra cost, it could be a strategy by the oil-producing countries themselves to cut down a supply just so that they will be able to arrest the reducing or falling rate of the price of the product. So all of this can happen within a space of time, probably by which time that you would have drawn your budget already. And so if you were implementing a policy regime, a subsidy policy regime, what it means is that you would have to find the money wherever you can to make up for the shortfall. But like I said, it is one of two things. Either you are going to have a shortfall or scarcity of the product because the importers might not be able to bring the product, or you would have government having to be looking everywhere for money to be able to take care of the subsidy rate.
From where you sit, what do you think we should do? We've had subsidies in the past. I remember clearly on some utilities, electricity, water. We had to adjust some of those under the Rawlings era because they simply were not realistic. But it depends on where you peg them. So subsidies, how come some countries are using subsidies balanced with other systems and they are getting by, especially in these times of harsh economic constraints? Because guess what? There is a purchasing power parity of the ordinary Ghanaian. And without subsidies, it will get to a point, at some point in time, where people simply cannot take it anymore, where you would have hit breaking point. Transport people can't even purchase diesel and all of that. I mean, we shouldn't get there, should we?
Obviously, we shouldn't get there. That's why I'm saying that frankly, if you'd ask me personally, whatever that would take to make the product available and at an affordable rate, that would be good for me. Okay, but the issue of the capacity, maybe Minister of Finance should be able to speak to that, or government should be able to speak to that. Because if you look at our mandate, it is basically to make sure that one, the product is available, two, then the investors who actually are investing their money into that business are able to recoup their investment. So I'm for anything and everything that, first of all, would guarantee the supply of the product, and two, it will be at a competitive or affordable rate for the ordinary person out there. But we ought to be looking at the bigger picture and look at what strategy ultimately would be good for us in the long run. Not something that we probably would just put ourselves into a lot of time, maybe driven by emotion and considering the fact that we just want to meet the desire and needs of the people, and then we'll all find ourselves into a bigger problem in the long run. I think that is my personal opinion on this particular matter. So if you ask me on whether or not subsidies should be brought back or not brought back, it is not something that I speak to directly. But I think that what ultimately should be our concern is availability of the product and at an affordable rate for all of us.
All right. Before I move on to Duncan, I just want to find out from you briefly. When these increments happen, like we're seeing now, and we've interacted with the GPRTU, I think it was Imora Abbas, who said that it was inevitable. They are having conversations and they will have to increase their transport fares. Some have said that these transport unions also take undue advantage of the situation, their 10% convention and all of that. What is your take? Because in this year alone, the number of times we've had fare increments, it's becoming a bit bizarre.
I think we need a certain regulatory regime to probably be able to get the drivers' union agree to one thing and implement same together. This haphazard way of implementing their own decisions, some would say 50%, some say 50%. I'm not sure it is good for all of us as a people. So I would urge that the union sit with the transport ministry be able to agree.
But they say they say they are tired of those. They say they are tired, Mohammed. They say they are tired of those. When they go and sit there, it's often a way of clamping them down and preventing them from doing this or that. That's why I think the last time they increased it without having these meetings, because they say the ministry, the other group things that they must come together with, Georgia with, are simply not facing the reality. They are purchasing it at such a high price, and you want them to leave their prices pegged at the same fares. It doesn't make sense, does it?
Well, I cannot speak directly to that, but like I said, I'm just encouraging that we should always have a dialogue, and we should all bring our ideas to the table, have an agreement, and implement same uniformly, at least for the bigger good of all of us in Ghana. I would not want to say a certain regime should be implemented for them, even if it is to their detriment, because obviously if it is not good for them, some might withdraw their services and the transport industry would suffer. So I'm saying that they should come to a meeting, and when they go to the meeting and agree on something, they should have a uniform application of same. But the practice where one union decides to price out of what has been agreed from the rest of the union, I'm not sure it is good for all of us at all.
Right. I was even talking about the unions. The unions are there meeting with government, and sometimes they don't even want to have that because they feel they'll be prevented from moving ahead with what they find to be realistic. But to you, Duncan, here we are again, and we're likely very soon going to see more transport fare increments. What do you think about that arrangement? Some say the transport unions are taking undue advantage, capitalizing on the situation to increase fares. But they'll also tell you, this is our reality. It's either we do this or go out of business and we'll not be able to transport you. Your take?
I agree with Kudus when he talks of we making fuel products available as opposed to a subsidy program. I agree. We are not actually even discussing subsidy.
Right.
The same way you would need the transport services to be available as opposed to a certain restrictive regime that says with increased fuel prices, cost of parts have gone up, cost of service and lubricant price have gone up. But when they intend or increase their fares, then we have a problem with it. Fuel pricing is on a free fall. We are actually into a crisis situation. Yet, we expect these commercial transport operators to go out there, pay for the same high cost fuel, and then charge the very low fares that they were charging some months ago or a year ago, simply because when they increase fares, cost of goods and services would also go up. I think we should be fair to them. We need to be very fair to them. My fear with this whole fuel pricing escalations is that in Ghana, and per our record, per our history, when things go up, they hardly ever come back down. They hardly ever do. And so if we don't put in the structures now, if we don't put in the mitigating factors to ensure that there's some stability in pricing at the pumps, or at best, if it has to go up, it goes up by some smaller numbers. And then we go back and say we are blaming drivers for increasing their fares. Then I think that we've lost, the entire argument. What is making them increase their fares is simply a function of higher and increasing cost of fuel, increasing cost of lubricants for their operations. And I think that the best the government could do for them would be to find a working formula that is scientific, a certain mathematical formula that says if X, then Y, if Y, then P, if M, then H. But we don't have that. Aside calling them to a room and say, oh, don't increase fares, don't do this. They are paying more. You've increased fuel prices at the pumps. Nobody goes to say, don't increase the fuel price. And yet, for the transport operator, the average, GPRTU person or Uber person or Trotro person, we would want to detect for them. Whereas
we are not dictating to the fuel pricing situation. I don't think we are being fair to them at all.
That's a fair point you make. But let's hear. So, Mohammed Kudus, PRO of the MPA, thank you so much for joining the conversation and shedding light on what you did. But we're also joined by Godfred Abulbera, General Secretary of the GPRTU, especially as you make mention of these bits you're talking about, Duncan. It's only fitting that we get them on board as well. Godfred, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, brother. How are you?
I am doing well.
Good.
We're doing what we can with the circumstances we're in. So when it comes to this latest fuel price increment, and I know interacting with some of your memberships over time, a lot of you use diesel. That is also, seeing a surge in terms of pricing.
Yeah.
Is that enough for you to increase your fares again? I mean, should we look forward to another price increment? And by how much?
Thank you for this morning question. I think partly you are always carrying out our problems, and then it helps ease to inform the general public. The fact is just that if government can't actually control the fuel price and the price at the pump, then the extent a strong arm to rather hold us not to increase our fares. We think it is not
Mr.
fair.
Abulbera, could you just speak up a bit for me? I'm struggling a bit to hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Better, much better. Thank you.
Good. I am saying that we are rather a bit surprised that government cannot control the price at the pump, and yet we are being extended with a hard hand not to increase our fares. For now, it is obvious that after our meeting yesterday, we have sent out a committee to do a survey and pick up the other increment of the other components, which has to do with the exchange rate, the spare parts, the lubricants, and as well. And then we all take a percentage calculation on all that, and then take a decision. And the ultimate answer is that fares will go up. The ultimate answer is that after having done that, that will inform us about what percentage are we going to increase. But fares definitely will go up.
Fares will definitely go up. You can confirm that.
Yes.
Are you going to be engaging the different, committees? Are you going to be engaging government on this before you go about your increment?
Shortly after today's survey, if the committee comes up with a report,
you will engage government. Hello, Mr. Abulbera. Hello? All right. We'll try to reconnect with Godfred Abulbera, General Secretary of the GPRTU. But Duncan, you heard it. They are definitely, they are not mincing words. They will increase transport fares. I just want to wrap with you on the conversation to do with minimal gains of some of these distribution companies, because we've also been told that because of the expense of bringing the product into the country and all of that, some of them are also being cautious about increasing their fuel prices to a certain level. It's competitive. We all know that. Do you feel that could mitigate whatever percentage increases we see, so that they would be cautious, maybe make a few pesos rather than make so much more? Do you think that is going to affect it, and which would then inure to the benefit of vehicle owners and all of that?
Before I go to that, let me chip in this. I don't think we should be encouraging the GPRTU to go to government. We shouldn't be encouraging these transport operators to go to government. Once we do that, once we force their hands, right?
But just to clarify, it is not that we are forcing their hand. It's something they've been doing over time. It's like convention.
Okay. That convention cannot hold any longer when you have deregulated fuel pricing. And like Godfrey said, if you cannot control fuel price increment, how do you justify attempts to control transport fares escalation. One is a subject or a function of the other. Why we cannot afford to have a transport system in Ghana that gets new buses every year or gets new fleet every now and then is simply because of that practice where we call the drivers, it's supposed to go up 10%, we say, oh no, just go and do 3% or 5%, the people will complain. So the investment people put into those buses, they cannot recoup them. Again, the servicing that they need to go for when due, they cannot go because they cannot even account for fuel and sales. So they endanger everybody. The challenge would have to be controlling your cedi, the local currency, which in effect will trickle to controlling fuel pricing, controlling the taxes such that finance ministers don't get a blank check just to walk to parliament and slap taxes on petrol at will. If we don't institute these things, and we would want to cut, corners and think that, okay, by restricting GPRTU from increasing their fares, we have done something. We are simply going to kill more people on the roads because these guys cannot service their vehicles to serve all of us. I do think that if we have any controls to do, get back to fixing toll. Get back to positioning bus in such a way that it can actually attract low-cost fuel. I was asking myself, why can't West Africa take advantage of the Russia situation like China is doing currently? Or we are simply aligned to the American and the European stance, and so even though Russia may be offering cheaper gas, cheaper fuel, we will still want to import from the high-cost, destinations. There's clearly a disconnect somewhere. There's clearly a need to fix somewhere. That fix should not simply be about going to squeeze the hands of these public transport operators so that they don't increase their fares and we pretend that all is well. Fuel is moving to 13 Ghana cities. That is a crisis. We need to fix it.
It is a crisis, you say, and we need to fix it. Godfred, thank you for rejoining us. So how much of an increment, if any, can we look forward to? I mean, I'm sure your discussions, you say you are conducting the survey, but having listened to Imora Abbas and others, it is clear that you're going to do this. How much are you contemplating in terms of an increment by percentage points?
Yes, I to be very honest with you,
it appears we seem to... I would just see whether we can connect one more time with Godfred. It's a crucial point to note so that we can have a fair idea, at least a range of an increment that the GPRTU, which is the biggest of these unions, would be contemplating. But Duncan, your final words on this entire conversation, this development we've been having.
Well, I would simply go back to the fuel pricing. The transport fares, I'm sure the GPRTU guys are competent enough to deal with it. But the fuel pricing bit, it is not the case that only Russia-Ukraine conflict is bringing these escalations at the pumps. It is not true. The truth is that your local currency continues to play a huge role in there. The truth is that the levels of taxes at this point, when fuel pricing is difficult to contain, you cannot continue to be charging Francis and everybody special petroleum tax because you want revenue. You cannot continue to be charging stabilization and recovery at this point. Stabilization and recovery at this point. So we simply leave the very, germane things and just look at, the other bits like transport fare increments. If they don't increase, they are still going to pay 13 cedis a litre for diesel. That is double what they paid for as of January. There need to be some fixing, and I do think that authorities should stop, going about the very things that we've gone about the very same way and expecting that something will change. If fuel jumps above 10 cedis, it simply is going to throw this economy out of sync. It has already done that. We are not looking for solution. We are simply looking to sit on our asses and simply pretend all is okay because of a Russia-Ukraine situation.
Right.
Let Russia stop bombing Ukraine today. Let crude drop to $80.
Okay.
Petrol will not drop below 10 Ghana cedi anytime soon because it's already gone up.
Point made there. Unfortunately, time is not our friend, but Duncan, we're very grateful for your time. Executive Director of COPEC. Let me wrap with Godfred Abulbere, General Secretary of the GPRTU. Godfred, welcome back. You were making a point.
Thank you. Yeah. My response was that from your question, we will not want to rush to increase beyond the 10%, as I mentioned earlier. But the survey that they are going to do today, and will submit the report today, will inform us as to what margin we are going to look at.
So do you not have any range in mind? I mean, on the back of the latest
when we do so, we might either be misinforming the public. But we also have one fact at the back is that when they increase more and more, we have some side effects as a result of the low passenger turnout. So we're looking at all that holistically and then see after the survey what margin will increase that will still put us in business.
So the survey is being conducted. Later today, we'll have some specifics to deal with. How soon do you feel if there's going to be an increment? I'm not asking you how much. How soon do you feel
how soon will be that? We will be fair by writing same with the same survey report to the ministry, and then with a certain particular date. If by within a week a meeting is not convened, we'll come out with our new fares.
And if a meeting is convened?
Yes, but it's convened, we'll go back there and do fair negotiation.
All right.
We just don't want to sharply disconnect that convention. All right.
Godfred, my final bit to you. So Duncan Amwa made a point about you having to go to government. It's been like a convention. He says it's not really helping, that it's not the best of situations, and that we must face market realities.
Yes.
What is your take on that?
Yes, what Duncan Amwa said, it's right. But we are always having it's a two-way coin. We look at it from one angle. The fact that the ministry speaks each time as a rep for the general public when it comes to fare increment. But when it comes to fuel increment, the ministry as government takes a distant position. And then we are hard hit with the high prices. So this time around, we will still go back there. But when it is not convened, the meeting is not convened as early as possible, then we'll come back and take a decision as we did the other time.
But Duncan is basically saying there's no relevance in that. If it must be increased, it must be increased. There's no need going to interact with government in the first place. Is that something you feel maybe you should be stopping?
If government continuously don't want to meet us, and then that sort of bureaucratic system still happens, at a point we'll disconnect that system, and then it's a convention, it's not a law.
Thank you, Godfred Abulbere, General Secretary of the GPRTU. Thank you for joining the conversation this morning. We also had joining the conversation Duncan Amwa, Executive Director of COPEC, and Mohammed Kudus, PRO at the NPA. Now, this is just the first belt of our big stories. Coming up next, another thorny problem, the lack of textbooks at the basic level. Even upon all the promises we've been given, the right things have not been done. How do we expect our children to prepare for their exams and moving on to the next level? That conversation up next with Bernice Abubedu Lanza. Stay.
Hello, thank you so much for staying on the AM show. It's now time to talk education. And you know, one of the major policies of this government is the free senior high school policy. A lot have lauded the initiative, and over time, people criticized it. Criticized government even for putting too much focus and attention on free senior high school at the expense of junior high and primary school education. This morning we're going to be having a conversation because we understand that there's a new curriculum for primary schools for 2022. Remember the issue of the new curriculum that was introduced and the lack of textbooks. Now the question is, why are we seeing a new one? What's happened to the old one? And why are we still not having even textbooks for the old one? We'll be having that conversation shortly. There's also the bit about concerns by a think tank about GES and the Ministry of Education and how they think the Ministry of Education is gradually sidelining the GES. We'll be having all that here on the AM show. I've been joined by Peter Anti. He's Executive Director for the Institute for Education Studies. Divine Ekpe is Research Fellow for Africa Education Watch. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for your time.
Good morning.
Let me start with you, Mr. Anti. You have some concerns about the GES and the Ministry of Education and how you think that the Ministry of Education, I beg your pardon, may be overstepping its boundaries when it comes to the work of the GES. Tell us more.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I think we raised that issue in the midst of the challenge that we had with the World Bank Gallup project, that it came out clearly that the Ghana Education Service, the Director General was not aware of the number of teachers that have been trained. And we sought not to talk about the training program or the amount or the controversy around how much have gone into it, because we didn't want to go into that area. We sought to look at a trend of incidents that have occurred in the education sector that seems to suggest that the ministry and the Ghana Education Service seems not to be working together as they used to. They are supposed to. And we listed examples like the conduct of the National Standardized Test, where we had documents that indicated that the ministry had a certain plan, whereas the Ghana Education Service also had a certain plan. And we saw that the Ghana Education Service was in favor of relaxing the processes instead of rushing it through as demanded by the ministry. And at the end of the day, we also saw what happened with the NST. So those were the incidents that we were recapping, and we tried to show that trend. We also cited the example of NAGRAT that came out forcefully some few weeks ago to indicate that they suspect that the ministry is planning to recruit headmasters for the newly STEM schools. We were able to get documents to that effect, that the policy, there was a plan to that effect. But then when it was raised at that time, the deputy minister came to say that it wasn't true. But that activity of recruiting personnel in the education service is truly the duty of the Ghana Education Service. So you will see that there's been instances where the mandates of the Ghana Education Service enshrined in law seems to be taken over by the Ministry of Education that is supposed to have an oversight responsibility about how the various agencies under the ministry are supposed to operate. So those were the issues that we felt we should bring to the attention of the people, and especially of the appointing authority, because implementation is key to policy success. So we were having serious implementation challenges, and we felt that it was because of that kind of non-coordination between the ministry and the Ghana Education Service, and that anybody who is in charge of the ministry should show leadership, and the other people, I mean the president and the leadership of this government, should call the leadership of the two institutions to order, so that the investment that we are making in the education sector will be able to realize
all right.
their
but Mr. Anti, these concerns that you raised, have you reached out to any of these bodies for a response?
Yes. I think we had an interaction with the PRO. He sought to give certain explanations.
PRO of what? The GES?
Sent,
hold on, sir. Sorry, the PRO.
Yeah, I mean the I mean the Ministry of Education.
Okay.
Of course, all the incidents that we cited in our release about 2 weeks ago were things that have happened. All that he sought to do was to explain why certain activities have been undertaken without reports to the Ghana Education Service. And we felt that we've been able to bring a lot of attention to it. And going forward, we are keenly following the activities in the sector to see whether there will be this kind of communication or an attempt to sabotage the Ghana Education Service in any of the other activities that they are supposed to undertake. And when we pick such signals, it will determine the next action that we would want to take.
Let me hear from Divine on this same matter. Divine, do you also get a sense that the ministry is overstepping and doing what is a strict responsibility of the Ghana Education Service? Hello, Divine. All right, I'm told we just lost Divine. So let's move on to the other focus areas for our discussion. Let's talk about the new curriculum, because we've seen a document which says that there's a new curriculum for the 2022 year for basic schools. According to the National Association or National Council for Curriculum and Assessment, the difference between this and the existing curriculum is that the existing curriculum includes content overload and an inability of the assessment system to provide sufficient data to help fashion improvement in teaching and learning. In the new curriculum, there is a shift away from the overloaded subject curriculum towards a reduced overload by promoting conceptual understanding. Okay, so first off, let me just find out from you, if this has come to your notice. We've been trying to reach the GES. We're yet to receive a response. Is this a new curriculum, or it is the existing curriculum was introduced, for which textbooks are yet to be received?
Oh, okay, thank you. Let me state this. I have not seen the document that you are referring to.
Okay.
What I know is that we started a series of curriculum reviews over the years, and we started with the basic school, KG to basic 6, and that was around 2019. And at that level, what we did was to change the curriculum from what used to be the objective-based curriculum to a standard-based curriculum. So we have changed that curriculum for almost 3 years now, and that is the curriculum that we said, or we have continuously said, that it does not have the needed textbooks, because the document that came out came with what we call the teacher's guide. And the teacher's guide is just a framework that is supposed to guide the teachers in what they are supposed to teach. But it is supposed to also come with a textbook that is supposed to be used during the teaching and learning process, and that is not available. So that is the curriculum for the basic school. And for the basic school, this is from KG to basic 6. Then earlier this year, we implemented another curriculum at the junior high school level, or we started the implementation. That curriculum is called the Common Core Curriculum or Common Core Program. That document is supposed to be for GHS 1 to GHS 3. So we have the Common Core, which is being implemented now for GHS 1 to GHS 3. And that document came with the teacher's guide and the learner's guide. So you will see that there's a shift from the standard base where we had only the teacher's guide. I think the developers now learned a little lesson from the implementation challenges they had with the standard base. So with the Common Core, there is a teacher's guide and there's a learner's guide. I wouldn't want to talk much about it because there's an evaluation going on, and maybe within next month, we would release our report on what we found so much. Then what is about to happen is the curriculum for the senior high schools. So we have changed the basic school up to basic 6. We have started with junior high school. Then technically, you wouldn't want to have this, the same document that the senior high schools are using. So there is going to be a reform or review of the senior high school curriculum, which I think they are starting the process, the process to write the curriculum somewhere next week. So that is what is happening. So I'm not aware of a new curriculum for the basic school this year. This year, there's not been, so far as I know, there's not been any talk about a new curriculum for the basic schools. What we have done this year was to introduce the common core for the junior high schools. And then the ministry and the Ghana Education Service, especially NACA, is working on producing a document that will be the curriculum for the senior high schools. And I think the process starts next week.
So looking at what's happened in the education sector since this government assumed office, I don't know what the proper practice is when you introduce a new system or a new curriculum into the education system. How much time should you give yourself before you begin to make further changes or adjustments? Because it appears that we are on an experimentation drive.
All right. For me, I think everybody knows my position on these reforms. I think it is needed. The last time we did a comprehensive reform in terms of curriculum at the pre-tertiary level, it goes back to somewhere 2008. And then I think we did by 2011, 2012, we did some innovations here and there to the curriculum. We have not had a comprehensive overhaul of the curriculum for almost like 10 years now. And that is problematic because the curriculum dictates what you teach your kids. And as the world changes, you need to also adapt your document, your educational system to suit what the world demands at that point in time. So technically or ideally, you will see that curriculums are reviewed after it has run its full course. And in an educational system, you are looking at between 4 to 5 years, you need to review the curriculum. Okay. So for the review and the reforms that we are doing, they are needed to be able to ensure that the graduates that will come out from the system are graduates that will fit into the current trend in the global space. What we have not been able to do well, and that has created a lot of challenges for us, is our ability to to stay true to the timelines that we have and then do proper implementation. So if we had timelines, and I talk about timelines because if we had timelines, we would know that after releasing the curriculum for the basic schools, the standard base, we had about 2-3 months to also work on the textbooks. For the inability of the system to produce textbooks for the schools in the public sector means that we did not follow the timelines. And what this leads to is that we will not be able to get the benefits of the actual goals and aims of the curriculum that we are supposed to get. So at the end of the day, we have a nice document that we have out there, but we have implementation challenges because we are not able to meet the timelines. And because of that, we're not able to implement the document as we are supposed to implement it. So for the changes and the reviews, I think we are doing the right thing, but the problem is really the implementation and our ability to stay true to our timelines.
We've been joined by Divine Pear again. Divine, thank you for reconnecting. While you were away, we were talking about the new curriculum introduced by the Ghana Education Service for kindergarten and primary schools. And we still don't have textbooks. Teachers are concerned. Parents are concerned. And I'll pose the question I posed to Peter to you too. Are we doing the right thing when it comes to the implementation of our curriculum? Or would you agree with those who say that we appear to be experimenting with any and everything at the expense of the future of our kids?
Yeah, thank you, Benis. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right, thank you. And good morning to viewers. Yes, rightly, I agree with Peter that we need the curriculum. The curriculum is rightly needed, given the fact that it's been over a decade that we reviewed our curriculum. But by international practices, we're supposed to review the curriculum every 5 years. Even if you are not going to change the entire curriculum, at least you review it every 5 years. I don't know if my network is smooth. It appears
we can
to
hear
be breaking.
you. We can hear you, Divine. Please.
All right. Okay. So by international practice, it must be reviewed every 5 years, even if you are not going to cause any major input into it. So yes, we are okay with the curriculum that have been reviewed, and then also the new inputs that are into it, because if you look at it, it cuts across cutting issues worldwide. We're talking about issues of climate change. We're talking about the issues of gender-related issue, equality and equity. So cross-cutting issues are embedded in the new curriculum. We're talking about skills that are needed in the 21st century. We're talking about communication skill, creativity skill, critical thinking, and then collaboration. So the curriculum is very good, and nobody can discount the goodness of it. It's very okay. It is the implementation that we are getting wrong. And I believe strongly, ideally, we shouldn't have been in a hurry to implement the curriculum if all things were not rightly in place. While we may have the curriculum, we can take the implementation gradually and ensure that we start on a good note. But as it stands right now, our starting has been very faulty, whereby we have started the curriculum without the necessary tools that teachers will need for the effective implementation of the curriculum. As I always say, every trained teacher will note that the textbook is very critical in aiding his or her teaching and learning. And if you are a trained teacher, professional teacher, you have known that in preparing your lesson for teaching, your first point of consultation should be the curriculum, and then after the curriculum, the textbooks. So after the textbook, you can look for any other material to reference. So where we have the case that teachers have the curriculum, but they don't have the textbook that mainly contains the content, then it becomes a problem. Mind you, teachers need both content skills and then pedagogical skills for effective delivery. So when you are going through training, you are taught the content of mathematics, what are in the various curriculum, what are in the mathematics, what are in the English, what are in the science. Then after that, you spend another year learning the methodology, that's the pedagogy, how to teach those contents. So you may have the skill, but if what you need to help you for the content, to apply the pedagogy to the content to be taught is not available, then it's actually hampered effective delivery of teaching and learning in a classroom. And our research has always showed that teachers are indeed struggling to implement the curriculum effectively in their classrooms. Some would have to resort to the internet to be browsing for material to use. And then some will also have to be copying some of the old texts from the old textbooks that are available. They have to be copying notes from it onto the blackboard for the student. And by the time they finish copying to those content onto the the blackboard, tells you time is already running. Even prior to the introduction of the new curriculum, textbook, the full complement, what we need to also understand that every student must have the 3 full core textbooks. That's the ratio. So the ratio is 3:1. The 3 textbook is to 1 pupil in a classroom. So prior to the introduction of new curriculum, it was only 20% of students that were having the full complement of the core textbooks that they needed. So even we want to say, as some people will argue that some of the changes that we have made in the new curriculum are not too different from the old one, and therefore teachers can still resort to some of the content from the old textbooks. We still have to make the case that not all schools even have the full complement of the old textbooks even before encouraging teachers to resort to that. So we have peculiar issue, and we must treat it as something that is urgent. And where we are having timelines and we are still missing the timelines, that is where the problem is. We're giving March, and then now we are in June. Now the next date is September. September is not far away. So what at all are we doing to ensure that teachers have what they need to implement the curriculum effectively.
Okay.
Some will say we have distributed the resource pack to teachers, and I don't want us to be making that argument because the resource pack, it concerns little to aid effective teaching and learning. If you take just the English aspect of the resource pack, the English aspect contains only 54 pages. Now, these 54 pages contain rationale of the curriculum, the objective, and others, and then also give sample of lesson plan on English in class 1, class 2, class 3, up to class 6. No, 54 pages is not enough to treat in-depth content that students are supposed to learn from classes 1 to classes 6. You can't do that. Even the curriculum for class 1 alone is more than half of the English. It's like 25 pages. So if you take the resource pack, which has only 54 pages, it hasn't treated the issues discussed in the curriculum in depth. So
Divine.
We rely on the resource pack.
Okay, so you're speaking about how the textbooks help teachers to explain or teach according to the curriculum. But let's talk about the children themselves. Many of us who went to school usually will rely on our textbooks to do extra work at home, revise what we've been taught in school. Do you think it's fair to examine these kids when we haven't given them these textbooks to help them study properly? Do you think that it's even fair enough for us to be talking about examining them?
All right, for examination, it depends on how you approach it or you take it. Because for assessment in education, it is always needed. We have what you call assessment for learning, assessment as learning, assessment of learning. So assessment for learning is what we call, teachers will call the diagnostic assessment. Before you start your teaching, you do a little bit of assessment. And we must not understand assessment necessarily like a test where the student to take a pen and a pencil to write something, questions on a question paper and then answer in a paper. No. So it can be even oral assessment. So the teacher will assess the student to understand the student level of appreciation of that topic before the teacher builds on that particular thing. That's the assessment for learning. Then assessment as learning. That is, as the learning is ongoing, the teacher is assessing the student to appreciate also the level of the student's understanding of what he or she is teaching. And then the last one is the assessment of learning. Now the teacher, after teaching, now evaluates the student or assesses the student to see whether that child has appreciated what has been taught. So for assessment, we will not have to predicate it on the availability of textbooks. It's always needed, and no matter what, whether you have textbook, whether you have textbook or not, once you have taught something or you are in a teaching process, or even before you have to teach, you always have to assess your student. But when we're talking about a summative assessment where you make a high-stake decision on the assessment, like BEC, like WASI, like the national standard assessment that we have just written, that is a high-stake examination. So once you are going to make a high-stake assessment on what you've given to the student, you are going to make a decision on something like that, then it's very important that you make available what the student needs to be able to prepare for their assessment, so that when you are assessing the child and the outcome, you know that, look, the outcome is a true reflection of what the child has given out. But when you have not made available what is needed for effective teaching and learning, and then you have assessed the child, and then your interpretation of that assessment data can be very faulty because you have not made available what is needed for effective teaching and learning, and the child has not performed well. You may think that probably is because the child hasn't done well, and therefore you need this remedial intervention for the child. But it could mostly also be because the child and the teachers do not have what they need for the effective teaching and learning to take place. So for high-stake assessment like national standard assessments, it's very important that we make available what teachers need for them to teach very well. You know, when we're talking about this new curriculum, the focus should not necessarily be on only the textbook, but other the ancillaries like posters, the charts that teachers need, the workbooks that the teachers need must accompany equally the textbooks. By one, you don't even have the test when you are asking of the ancillaries.
Right.
It's very difficult.
Okay.
So these are all needed for the teachers to prepare the students so that when we are carrying out the assessment, that is the high-stake assessment, as we have implemented, piloted the first phase by having for only class 4. Understanding is that by this year, we should scale it up to classes 4 and 6. It's very important that you make available
all right,
what is
Divine,
needed for them to prepare for the high.
Okay. Let me come to you, Mr. Anti. So there are those who are painfully withdrawing their children from public schools to private schools because of some of these issues, the lack of textbooks and other things affecting teaching and learning. Just like many state-owned or public institutions, there appears to be some sort of mismanagement or lack of proper, let me put it that way, lack of proper management. And so over time, privately owned institutions appear to be doing better. And like we saw with Ghana Telecom and other public institutions, eventually we sell them off. Are you confident that we can put the public school system back on the track it used to be 40, 50 years ago, where people would even pull out their children from private schools to public schools because they were offering the best education at that time? Are we on track to doing that, or if we aren't careful, we're going to see a more devastating impact of the decisions we are making today?
I think one of the ways that we bridge the gap of inequality in any society is through education. So some of us are passionate about education because we see it as a powerful tool to bridge the gap of inequality. What we have succeeded in doing in this country is to use education, especially at the basic level, to widen the gap of inequality. And it is evident in the way we have run our public basic schools. We are talking about textbooks now. As we are discussing this, it is known that students in private basic schools have access to textbooks. Teachers in private basic schools are teaching the students with textbooks. The difficulty is that in public basic schools, it is the duty of the government to provide the textbooks for the children. And in as much as we have not been able to do that, we are widening the gap of inequality. And that is why you said that most people are taking their awards away from public schools. I've done a school choice survey for an international organization before, and it came out clearly that even though private schools charge higher fees and our public basic school seems to be free, parents, even those with lower income, still would want to struggle and take their awards to private basic schools instead of the public that they seem to be free. And the reason is simply that they know that when it comes to the delivery of quality education that can secure the future of their children, that is not what is done in most of our public basic schools. They lack the amenities, they lack the resources, they lack the commitment, they lack the supervision, they lack everything that needs to be in place to ensure that you are delivering quality education for the kids. So by our own arrangement, we are widening the gap of inequality, especially at the basic level, because one, we have not been committed to provide the needed resources that the kids need and the teachers need to be able to function well. And I don't think that this is going to stop any time, any moment from now. I'm hoping that we will get a leadership at the education front that will not be so much fixated with secondary education, but will think about the foundation of our education. You see, you can do all the investment at the tertiary level, you can do all the investment at the secondary level, but the products that feed into these two levels of education are those that are being prepared at the basic level. So you cannot have a very shambolic basic education system, a basic education system that does not give its products the needed skills and knowledge that they need, and think that when they graduate to the secondary level, they will be able to perform magic. And that is what we are having now. Recently, you heard the minister complaining that the secondary schools are picking students that are doing well. I was thinking that he would say that what can we do as a country to fix the challenges at the basic level so that the students who graduate from the basic level would also be doing well. We are not doing any good thing at the basic level. And if my expectation is that this is going to end anytime soon, I doubt, because I've not seen any commitment from authorities that shows that we are going to change the way we are handling our basic education in Ghana. It is very painful. And we talk about these things and a lot of attention is not given because, as I said, at the basic level, all of us, including myself, are making sure that our kids get the best of education. So we take our kids to the private schools where we think that the resources are there, the commitment is there, the supervision is there. And because of that, we are all quiet about the things that are happening in our basic education schools across the length and breadth of the country. But if you delve into it, I can tell you that it is nothing to write home about. We are just doing anything to represent teaching and learning, doing anything to represent delivering education. And we are not equipping these students, these kids in public basic schools enough to be able to compete with their colleagues that attend the private schools. And this is not going to change anytime from now until we have the leadership that is committed to basic education in the country.
Let me mention that we've been trying to reach the Ministry of Education. We are still trying to do so because there are certain questions only the ministry can answer, especially why we keep shifting the deadline for the provision of textbooks, which is a very vital element when it comes to teaching and learning in basic schools. And Divine, let me come back to you. So what can we do to remedy the situation? Like I asked in my first question to you, it appears that we are experimenting a lot. Would you say that the Education Ministry and the GES do a lot of thorough research before they come out with some of these policies and interventions in our education sector? Hello, Peter.
All right, thank you, Bernice.
All right, Divine, please go ahead.
Hello, Bernice.
Divine, I can hear you. Please go ahead. Divine, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
All right, thanks. So, yes, yeah. All right, one of the things that we indeed want to encourage in the Ministry of Education is to use evidence for policy formulation. And I know a number of workshops have been done to enhance the capacity of the ministry to that effect. The ministry itself has been investing in data collection to influence their policy formulation. I know that through the EMIS data and other platforms, they have robust data on our education system in Ghana. But they have to also appreciate the fact that they also need the input, other research input from non-state actors like civil society organizations or those in the academics. And I believe when we are able to fuse these organs together, the ideas, we're able to fuse ideas from these organs together, we are able to find some trend of solution to some of the issues that we are facing. Because there are a plethora of ideas being proposed by non-state actors like civil society organizations. For instance, the issue about textbook primarily is about lack of funding. The lack of it, therefore, this lack of its supply is primarily about issue of funding. And so we have to be able to see how best we can sustainably raise money to finance education. That's one of the issues. And our proposition has always been that even some of the issues regarding education financing, since you are still in need of money to finance your educational projects and programs, you just have to also to be very efficient in the use of your educational budget. because we are seeing so many wastages in the system. And then also, aside the fact that there are wastages, we have seen the worst of it, whereby the GET fund has become at 25%. And we have been calling for its total and capping or increasing the capping to at least 50%. Bernice, am I on air?
Please, we can hear you. You are.
All right, thanks. So at least uncapping the GET fund to total uncap it or increasing from 25% that it is currently to 50%. So when we are able to ensure that we have free resources for education in general, and then there's something also substantial left for basic education, because as it stands, the concentration, rightly, we all know, is on the pre-senior high school. And then expenditure on senior high school is increasing as that of the basic education expenditure is decreasing. So clearly, some of the issues that we are identifying is lack of finance. And we have to, one, as I mentioned, ensure efficient use of the limited resources in the education space, and then also ensure that some of the laws, some of the policies that are inimical to education financing, like the capping of GET fund, we uncap it or increase the capping to free resource for allocation to the education sector. So yes, there are issues that have to be addressed, and the issues are more about money. But as I mentioned, whilst you are calling for increments in education budget, you have also to be very careful to note that the increment alone does not translate into its efficiency, its efficient use. So one, you call for its increment, but two, you must also call for its efficient use, because the amount we are putting into it and the result we are getting, some countries do not even channel that percentage of their annual budget into education or their GDP into education, but they get more outcome than what we are putting into it. So we must be very careful, just not be calling for increments in education, but also ensure accountability in the space, so that once there are checks in place that will ensure efficient use of the limited resources that we put into the education sector, we can get a corresponding outcome for it.
Right. Thank you very much for your time here this morning. That's Divine Kwe, he's research fellow at Africa Education Watch. And earlier, we heard from Peter Anti, Executive Director of the Institute for Education Studies. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. We've been having a conversation on education, the new curriculum, the lack of textbooks, the impact on public education here in Ghana. You're watching the AM show. When we come back, we'll be letting you have your say on the major issues we've been discussing here this morning: the rise in petroleum products, the rise in transport fares, and also about what you feel about our education system, especially at the KG and primary levels. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Do stay. Thank you for staying here on the AM show. Before we let you have your say on the major topics we've been discussing today, thankfully, we've been joined by the PRO of the Ministry of Education, Kwesi Kwarteng. Hello, Kwesi. Thank you so much for joining the program. So there are a few things we discussed earlier that I would like you to respond to. First off is why we keep shifting the deadline when it comes to providing textbooks for the new curriculum for basic schools.
Okay, very well. Thank you, and a very good morning to you and your listeners. Yes, so we admit that there has been some delays. If you like it, you may call it some undue delays with regards to the provision of the textbooks, of which the Ministry of Education and the Minister of Education fully takes responsibility for it. Of course, at the end of the day, we know that there may be one or two reasons that has probably occasioned the delay. For instance, if you look at some point, I mean, you were all in this country when we had some publishers initially brought some books that contain some sensitive elements relating to certain tribes that I will leave unmentioned, I'll leave unnamed now. And so at some point, the Minister of Education had to set up a quality assurance team to review the books on a number of times. At some point, two procurement processes may come in, and then finally, the contract has been signed between the ministry and the publishers to provide the book within a space of 120 days, which is even a fundamental term of the contract. But of course, I mean, beyond all the reasons that may be given as having been or partly responsible for the delays, I will say that all of them will not be justifiable absolutely. And the most important thing is that it is still the burden and the duty of the ministry to provide the textbooks for our students. And so, whichever way we admit the delays, we take responsibility for the delays, and then we have assured and will continue to assure Ghanaians that, consequent to even before this conversation, you realize that we had issued a press out. I think it was the 20th of May when we said that the contract between our publishers and the student and the ministry has actually been finalized, and based on the terms of it, they are bound within 120 days to provide the text. But I think before I land on that, let me reiterate that even though textbooks is very essential and very useful within our discourse, if we look at the context of this curriculum, the standard-based curriculum, it is not entirely textbook-centered as it was before. This curriculum is not the textbook-centered. Within this curriculum, textbooks are supplementary reading materials that probably assist students or pupils in the home. I'm sure it is the more reason why, even though the ministry probably envisages some delays, probably from our publishers and other things, and some administrative delays, we were quite proactive in securing over 150,000 resource packs, that is teachers and learners resource packs, for our teachers to also be able to assist in the classroom. So it is not as though that even in the absence of the textbooks, there are no materials that the teachers are using. But of course, I mean, it is crucial.
All right. Okay, Mr. Kwating, so you've spoken about resource materials which have been given to teachers, but largely the students or the pupils would rely on the textbooks, like you said, for supplementary studies and extra studies. One would have thought that this quality assurance you mentioned as part of being one of the reasons for the delay would have happened before the new curriculum was introduced. In hindsight, would you say that we actually rushed in introducing and implementing this particular curriculum? Because it's been almost 3 years, if my memory serves me right. We've been waiting for the textbooks.
In the word which introduces textbooks before the curriculum is implemented. The implementation of...
Mr. Kwating, please permit me so that you get my question right. I'm not saying that you would have introduced the textbooks, but the textbooks would have been ready so that once the curriculum is rolled out, the textbooks can go along with it. But here we have a case where quality assurance is even coming in more than a year after the curriculum was introduced. And that's why I'm saying, wouldn't it have been okay to ensure that every material needed for the rollout will be ready so that once we roll it out, we can just attach the complementary textbooks and other materials for easy teaching and learning?
Yeah, I believe you have a point, except to say that the rolling of a curriculum is not an event. It's a process which includes, after the rollout, I'm sure there are some reviews, there are some discussions on how far the curriculum has been rolled, and of course, I mean, there is accompanied materials that probably complements the curriculum, which includes the textbook. I mean, what is more important is that the ministry has not run away from taking responsibility from the delays. What we are just doing is to be re-echoing this whole conversation about the delays in the textbooks. I mean, it's been over 2 years now. Of course, I mean, initially when the curriculum was implemented, remember that just subsequent to that, almost a full year, whole economic activities everywhere was standstill. And our publishers were unable, partly due to COVID. And our publishers within that space could not. At some point, even the training of our teachers could not be finalized. So even though on paper, you may see the date of the implementation of the curriculum as this, it was not even finalized in absolute sense. Because look at, for instance, the Common Core Curriculum, for instance, which was introduced at the JHS level. It was just this year, at the beginning of this year, that we finished training of our teachers, because you realize that the space of 1 year during the COVID time, you couldn't convert all the teachers at a place and then, finish the training. But what is most important? The most important thing is that at the end of the day, ministry takes responsibility that there has been a delay. I'm landing. At the end of the day, contract has been signed for publishers to produce the textbooks. Even beyond that, it is not as though there has been assurances and failed assurances and promises and failed promises. As I speak with you, through the support of UNESCO, the ministry has been able to even distribute the English language textbooks to largely all schools in Ghana. So it is not as though that we are indifferent about the situation and we do not want to get the textbooks there. Some have been supplied. The others to the publishers are bound within 120 days, as at I think May 20th or so, to supply the textbooks, which ends somewhere around September, where we are very sure that since the contracts are signed and there is a fundamental term of the contract, the textbooks will be provided to the various schools.
All right, Mr. Kwatan, let's move away from the curriculum and let me take your brief response to this issue raised by the Institute for Education Studies. I spoke to its executive director a while ago, Peter Anti. Now, they are concerned that the Ministry of Education appears to be sidelining the Ghana Education Service when it comes to its operations. And I'll give you a few examples they cite. They cite the school calendar, and they say that for some time now, we've been experiencing an erratic academic calendar, which is uncharacteristic of our pre-tertiary education sector. The GES has been responsible for the school academic calendar all these years. However, recently, the Ministry of Education set up a committee to produce what they said was going to be a long-lasting, stable academic calendar. The end result of this decision is a matter of public record. They also cite the recruitment of heads, and they say documents available to them reveal that far-reaching decisions were made on the recruitment of heads for newly completed STEM schools. And this, they say, was resisted by teacher unions. Although the ministry refuted this claim, there's enough documentation that points to the fact that NAGRAT was right in its claim. Let me just take your response on this particular issue. What exactly... Hello?
Let me say that I am very surprised that upon all the researches that I faced to, they fail to acknowledge and appreciate that there is a changing dynamic when it comes to education management in Ghana. And that as I speak to you, there is a statutory legislation that undergirds or underpins the management of education in Ghana. And I was hoping that with how IFES has been operating when it comes to research and other things, probably they would have also referred to that document. That today, as I speak with you, there is Education Bodies Regulatory Act that more or less has created other agencies responsible for some of the activities that were initially undertaken by the Ghana Education Service. So let me give you an example. If we look at the schools inspectorates, for instance, NASIA, initially, it was just a unit under the Ghana Education Service, which was occupying just a room under the Ghana Education Service. That was responsible for schools inspection and other stuff. Today, as I speak with you, it's a fully fledged agency with the Director General managing the affairs of schools inspectorate. Again, You look at an agency like the National Teaching Council, which was just a unit with the Ghana Education Service. Today, when it comes to the regulation of over 350,000 teachers across the country, it is no longer entirely the responsibility of the Ghana Education Service per se, but also, and now, it is the responsibility of the National Teaching Council. Initially, we had the Ghana, we had even just TVET, about 49 of the schools, all being regulated by the Ghana Education Service. Today, if I speak with you, there is a new TVET service, just like the Ghana Education Service. The Ghana TVET Service has also been established with the Director General and deputies regulating almost 200 TVET schools. So if you are in the Ghana Education Service, or if you are an observer and you do not make reference to the Education Regulatory Bodies Act, which has caused or created some level of how do you call it, deficiency, of course, to ensure effectiveness and efficiency in the running of education management in Ghana, you may think that the Ministry of Education, when performing their oversight responsibility and making sure that there is indeed checks and balances, there is indeed separation of powers, which are all principles which are upheld by the very principles of our Constitution, you may think that the Ministry of Education is infiltrating in the Ghana Education Service. Now, let's even look at the examples that Peter cited. You may take all these examples one by one, and you realize that these are all issues that we've already responded to. I am surprised that when he was making his argument, he never responded to, he never cited to the responses that was given by the ministry. Now, let's look at school calendar, for instance. Yes, initially, it was the prerogative of the Ghana Education Service. But today, we have the Ghana TVET Service also on board. Against the backdrop of the incoherence and the unharmonization, largely occasioned by the distortion caused by COVID within our academic space, the Minister for Education said that, well, there is a new service on board. So you now have two services, all of them regulating Ghanaian students. So let's form a ministerial committee on academic calendar so that you come out with a comprehensive calendar that addresses the distortions in the calendar. How do you call that an infiltration? But this was a job which was initially done by the Ghana Education Service. Today we have the TVET Service on board. So are you saying that Ghana Education Service should also now maybe dictate or make provisions for students within the TVET space? Obviously, no. Again, let's look at recruitment of heads. I mean, clearly, we came out to debunk that. And at no point will the minister or the ministry make recruitment for GES students. It has never been within the domain of the minister or the ministry, and we cannot do that. It's clear that it was GES that appointed their own head teachers. I mean, you cannot rely on a meeting where you saw a draft document which has no heading, which had no reference to the ministry or even the Ghana Education Service, to say that just because you saw a document circulating where somebody has written draft document that proposal by a committee to appoint headmasters, to say that based on that, it means that the ministry was interfering in the ESW. And consequently,
Mr. Parting.
Yeah, I'm listening to you.
Yes, point well noted. We appreciate that you can make time to be with us. It's now time to hear from our viewers. Let's hear your thoughts on the main subjects we've been discussing this morning: fuel prices, the education system, lack of textbooks. We just heard an explanation. And the PRO of the Ministry of Education says they take full responsibility, but he's tried to give some reasons for the delay. Benjamin, you want to announce the numbers quickly? And
yes, 0302 211 691 extension 2. As always, it's rolling on your screen. You can call that number and get interactive with us. We were just talking about education, textbooks, and I'm just screaming in my mind for how long. I mean, yes, there are some issues that have to be dealt with, but this long with the children not having textbooks, it's a major problem.
And that's why I posed that question. You intend to roll a new curriculum. You know, it would have to go with new textbooks and other learning materials.
I mean, how do you even start?
That was the question. Without textbooks. That was the question. But he says, well, rolling out a curriculum is not an event. And so
it's a process.
It's a process, but textbooks.
So how about you make textbooks a part of the process right from the outset?
Well,
see?
Okay, so we're getting a call from Ho. Frank, hello, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Let's hear you. Hello, Frank?
Yeah.
Yes, good morning. Let's hear you, please.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the new curriculum.
Please go ahead.
Well, I am the school owner here in the Volta region for Karista International Academy. So some of these things, they concern us so much.
Sorry, Frank, there's just a little bit of difficulty hearing you. Can you kindly speak up?
Say it again?
Yes, I'm asking you to please speak up. We are struggling to hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm saying I'm a proprietor of a school, Karista International Academy in Hope.
Okay, please go ahead. Share your thoughts with us.
Yes. So some of these things, they concern us so much as school owners, private school owners. But we had a NAS meeting the other day where they were discussing some of these issues with regards to the CCP and so many other things. And we feel the government is so much in a hurry to implement something. They have not educated the school owners, even the private school owners, enough. So we just do not know what the educational leadership, the leadership currently at the educational front is so disturbing. They do things hurriedly without planning well. And I thought this thing must stop. Why the hurry? You don't even have the textbooks in the public schools. And so they don't also talk to us as private school owners. So there's no collaboration when you check closely between the government institutions and then the private schools. So we want to advise the government to hold on with the implementation of some of these things. And
all right, Frank.
Do them gradually.
Right. We appreciate your time here this morning. Sorry, we don't have a lot of time, so please keep your comments and submissions quite brief. We have Michael from Asesawa. Let's hear you, Michael.
Good morning. Please, the problem the government is facing for the teachers is too much. So, the thing they are doing, if possible, they should have a clear-cut plan so that it will help us going forward. Because now, if you take the curriculum they provided, and then the learners part and the teachers part, and you see the varieties of information here and there, and it's not giving you a clear idea where you have to turn yourself to. And it's creating a problem for us. If you get these books from this particular company and other company, they are not like they say. It's different. And it is very, 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 very worrying. When you go to the classroom, if you don't do your research well, you find yourself frustrating yourself, you see that people going wayward, and which is very bad idea to do. So I would advise that the leaders should sit down and have a way they can just do it to help the children.
Right. Thank you very much.
Let's move on to Stephen in Rioso. Is this Sishi? Rioso. And just a reminder to all of you that we're also talking about the latest or impending increment in fuel prices. Stephen, do share your thoughts with us.
Okay. Hello.
Go ahead, Stephen.
What I was saying was, when you go for teaching practice in the various schools during the semester, you would ask of the teachers those resources he was talking of. They will tell you they haven't been given any resources, and as well the textbooks as well. So I think the government and the education ministry should be truthful to us, because with the up and coming ones who have taken up this role to be teachers, we can't find ourselves wanting. We can't find ourselves wanting as our colleagues in the sector are suffering now. So at least they should be up and running whatever that they do.
All right.
Thank you, Stephen. That's Stephen from Rioso sharing his thoughts also. We have Frank, another Frank from Tema. Hello. Let's hear you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Good morning to you and your viewers.
Hello, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. What I want to say is that the educational system now is to deny the poor the opportunity to be educated and educated well. They introduced this system, no textbook, no nothing. But they have their wars in the international schools, schooling, paying high fees, and denying those who could, in a small way, make payment so that their kids can also be enlightened. They're denying them this. This is a fine way of always keeping the poor poor and keeping the rich rich. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Brief, straight to the point. Let's head to Navrongo. Gideon, let's hear you.
Hello. Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Please.
Sorry, Gideon, we can hardly hear you. Can you kindly speak up?
Yes, hello.
Please go ahead. Hello, Gideon.
Yeah, please. Is it better now?
Much better.
Thank you. Please, I'm saying that with regards to the textbooks, to be sincere, the Ministry of Education, they just have to make sure they fast track things because it's not just helping. You can imagine any time the issue of textbooks pops up, then they keep talking about their provided teaching packs. They know that the teaching packs are not meant for everything. When you are preparing as a teacher to go into the classroom to teach, yes, you need the teacher's guide or that pack, which will help you to prepare your lesson. But when you go inside, what we call the subject matter, the content that the children are supposed to learn, it is not in the teacher's guide. That can only be found in textbook. So sometimes when this issue of textbook comes out and then our policy makers come and tell us they have given us teacher's guide, the teacher's guide is not meant for the content. The subject matter is lacking. And you see that teachers are suffering. Sometimes you go to the net to get information, but it's not everything that the child will need. So to be sincere, please, they should just fast track issues and make sure that they provide us with the textbooks. And also, please, can you just ask the fellow once again if you can link him up where our laptops are? They deducted our money since almost 20 a year. We're not getting the laptops yet.
All right, we'll focus on that. We'll focus on that one of these days. Thank you very much, Gideon from Navrongo. Our last caller is joining us from Krobo, Odumase. Felix, let's hear you.
Yes, good morning, madam.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's so heartening to be hearing this story. But this reform has been done, and they've never thought of bringing in books to teach the children. Meanwhile, it seems today or it seems this week or so, there were Evans Merton was discussing on productivity, while we have disparity in salaries and issues. They were talking of productivity, which is not matching up. Whenever these issues come up, the parliamentarians will go and sit down and criticize teachers. They never thought of teachers training them to become who they. If the were to be like this, they would have sat over there and depend on those things to be talking. I don't know whether when they get there, they have forgotten that the teacher who made them this. You will see people over there go and sit on panels to discuss issues about how our educational sector is going. But you will see them turning the blind eye to it. Meanwhile, they know the realities. And I'll never blame them because their children are not part of this. They have the money to be able to take their children outside. And they leave the situation in a mess for us to stay in it. It seems that they don't want us to also compete with them at the top there. If we were to get a favorable ground, I don't think they will be there doing all these things.
Thank you very much. Hello, Felix.
Whenever they are called, they have issues, they have ways to address it. They have ways to defend themselves. Meanwhile, the real thing on the ground, you are talking of productivity, but you never thought of a book to teach the child to come out with a result.
We appreciate your time here, Felix. Sorry, we ran out of time. And that's Felix, our last caller from Krobo, Odumase, sharing his thoughts. Oof, what a show it has been, yeah?
Yeah, what a show it's been. From fuel prices to the lack of textbooks, we can only pray for the best on both fronts. But right before we go, as usual, we're going to take a sip of water. Water is life. It regulates your body temperature and keeps you alive and kicking. Awake is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. We have the perfect size for every occasion, 330 and 500 ml bottles to fit your pockets and bags, 750 ml for the heavy drinkers, and 1.5 liters for those who always want a lot more. We also have introduced our special 19-liter jars for offices and homes. Now you just need to stay awake with Awake Purified Drinking Water wherever you go. So come on, Grab a bottle of Awake water and get quality hydration. Awake purified drinking water, one for life. Remember, for every bottle you purchase, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. It's produced by Casapreco. For bulk purchases, just call 0262 351 251.
And do you know that the income of a young entrepreneur from some selected businesses is exempt from tax for 5 years? Yes. Any young entrepreneur engaged in manufacturing, information and communications technology, agro-processing, energy production, waste processing, tourism and creative arts, horticulture and medicinal plants does not need to pay an income tax on these activities for their first 5 years of operation. A young entrepreneur engaged in businesses that enjoys an initial 5-year concession benefits from the following applicable tax rates for an additional 5 years. Accra and Tema 15%, other regional capitals outside the 3 northern regions 12.5%, outside other regional capitals 10%, and the 3 northern regions 5%. For further clarity and information, please contact your nearest GRA office, Ghana Revenue Authority, Integrity, Fairness and Service. And just so you know, Ghana has developed double taxation treaties with countries such as the United Kingdom, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, among others, for the relief from double taxation on income arising in Ghana. Taxpayers benefit from tax credit facilities under the double taxation treaty. Let's offer you the very best of progressive and a flexible way of owning your home in Ghana. And Benjamin will tell you more about that.
Well, rent to own is a 2, 3 or 4 bedroom house or beachfront villa in the new Accra city. Cities and habitats, rent to own at a price you can afford and at a pace you can pay. Just visit www.newaccra.city for more details or call or WhatsApp 0555 530 300, 0577 911 101 or 0557 054 635. The Planned Cities Extension Project shaping Ghana's urban future. And on that note, we have to give way. And up next, Joy News Desk. But it's been fun.
Yes, it has been. Great serving you as always. God willing, tomorrow morning we are back at 6 a.m. with the AM show. Worth waking up for, isn't it?
Always. You have a good day.